you get the short share?
What'd you say?
I don't know.
Comments and actually I can figure it out.
We're on.
Comments and
It's in the third time. Sure.
the fishbowl.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think we all have copies yet anyway, so. Is this the mail? Okay. All right, guys, it's about 3 minutes past 7, so we're going to open the meeting of, the Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, October 16th. On tonight's agenda, we do have a full agenda, and we have a number of guests. We're going to be going over the special town meeting warrant. As you may recall, the special town meeting is scheduled for November 4th. It'll be held at 7 o'clock in the high school gym here at 201 Richard Francis Glenowitz Way. Special town meetings, we always have one in the fall. We usually have one in the spring/summer, and then also a follow-up in the fall. So tonight we're gonna start tonight's business. We have a quorum, so we're gonna start tonight's business by going over the special town meeting warrant articles. We do have the town manager, Rick LaFond. If you want to come up, Rick, you can come. If you want to be, do you want to sit for the whole thing?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to maybe dispense with the other guests first,
Yeah.
just as a courtesy.
Yep,
and
I
then
think that's what we should do. I didn't know if you wanted to be part of it.
I can be in the peanut gallery until we do that. I'd be happy
That's,
to do that.
that works for me. Okay, good, thank you. All right, so having said that, let's, gonna start, do you guys all have a copy of the warrant? Okay.
Did you get the other page?
Would be it right here, excuse me, for me. Okay. And just so, one more, two.
Oh, I
Got it.
I have it.
Could I just explain the handouts real quick then, before I go back to the peanut gallery?
Certainly.
There's the final copy of the warrants for everybody, obviously you can see. And this handout that I have is, as you can see, I have in the top right-hand corner, my Catholic school penmanship would be very disappointed in me, but I have the number of the article that the information corresponds to. So our 1 regarding the stabilization account is on 1, and then we go to Article 3, 4, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some articles for which there's no information, but there's guests here tonight to speak to that, so.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what you have in front of you.
Okay, thank you. So, in order, because we do have some guests here tonight, we may go a little bit out of order here, so that we're going to try to touch base with those who are petitioners or other guests to speak on the warrant articles. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to start with Article 5. And we're going to go right into Article 6. On the special town meeting, Articles 5 and 6 were by petition. So, Joe Shea, these are yours, right, Mr. Shea? Okay, would you like to come up?
I submitted these,
Before we get, do you know everybody here?
not completely, I don't know.
Okay.
What?
Matt? Sala.
Okay.
And you know everybody else, I think, right?
I don't know if
Chad Lovett.
Chad Luppin, I met you before, but sorry.
And I'm Maureen Jansen. I know
Yep.
we've met before. All right, so go ahead, let me open the floor to you. I'm sorry, I just said that, and I'm going to back that track. The charter requires that the Finance Committee provide a recommendation on all articles that are on the warrant. Those have to be made available 10 days prior to the town meeting. So our goal tonight is to get a recommendation. That's why you're here. We want to ask you questions and stuff so that we can have those posted no later than Monday.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Now it's all yours.
All right, I am involved with the airbase redevelopment or plans for it since I joined the selectmen in 1990. I was a member of the planning committee that was set up in 1995 when the Navy announced it was going to be dissolved. The Navy was going to abandon it. I've been involved in various other functions, including the chairman of the Abington Reuse Committee, and also I'm now the chairman of the advisory board for the airbase, for the South Field, or whatever you want to call it. It has not gone as well as we hoped for a variety of reasons. However, and I prepared a document which tries to go through and express what my reasons for submitting this article are. If you people could pass it down. It's my reasoning.
Should we read the article for anyone who?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to do it, or you want me to?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, just so people know what we're talking about.
Okay. To see if the town will motion to have the Abington Town Meeting representing the residents of Abington vote to oppose any change to that enabling legislation establishing the South Shore Tri-Town Development Corporation, SSTTDC, unless these changes are approved by the governing authority of each town. In Abington, the governing authority is a town meeting. This is to preserve the ability of the towns to continue control over the development plans of the former South Weymouth Air Base or take any other action relative therefore. The second article, Article 6, is the same, except instead of the legislation, it is the plan. When we,
Changing the plan. Thank you.
yeah, well, the first one is the legislation, the second one is the plan, which is basically says how many units you can develop at what phases and so forth. When the towns agreed on the original legislation back in 1998 and the original plan, one of the things that was concerns for everybody was, well, we're going to maintain local control. That was one of the reasons I think the voters of all three towns, because at the time it was all three towns were town meetings, felt that they wanted to have control of what happened, and that was one of the reasons they wanted to agree to a plan. But as part of the legislation, it was agreed, and in the legislation, that any changes to the legislation itself had to go back to the three town meetings or three governing boards of the town. Now in Weymouth is now the town council. And any changes to the plan had to go back to the three towns. In 2002, that was after a 3-year planning process from 1995 to 1998 to develop the plan and the legislation. In 2002, L&R was selected as the master developer by the Tri-Town. They felt the plan needed to be changed, as did the Romney administration at the time. Both the Romney administration and L&R wanted to have more housing, substantially more housing, and less commercial. The original plans was heavier on commercial to get us jobs, which was basically part of the Navy's, the federal mandate as a disposal basis was to create jobs. It was a 3-year process, and the L&R came with a revised plan, and again, it went back to the towns for review and discussion, and it was approved by the Abington and Rockland town meetings and the Weymouth Town Council. Earlier this year, L&R, as an entire corporation, was bought out or sold out to a firm called Starwood, who is a venture capital firm. We heard some rumors that they were looking at making changes. Basically, they want to cut back on commercial development has not gone that well at the base. For a variety of reasons, the economy and the questions about the water supply. And also, I think there has been, at least in my personal opinion, some feeling that L&R was more comfortable on developing residential than developing commercial. That's my personal opinion for what it's worth. But the plan called for example, phase 1, and it's on the last page of your document I handed out, said phase 1 had to consist of 1,000 units of residential and 300,000 square feet of commercial before they could go to phase 2. It also said that they had to complete the parkway, which is underway. We started hearing rumors that Starwood wanted some changes, but nothing was coming through officially. On July 29th, Starwood was not meeting with the towns or the Tri-Town. At least there were some very short introduction meetings, but no official meetings. They were meeting with various legislatures and discuss changes. That was known. On July 29th, Starwood came to a board of directors meeting and made a verbal presentation. Nothing was in writing, basically saying that they were going to change the plan. The plan needed to be changed. It was not, the plan we had now for a mixed use was at this time not feasible. Basically, that they wish to stop, that they wish to halt the commercial development and move ahead on residential faster than had been originally agreed. They said other changes were needed to the rules and regulations, etc., and they were going to be, and they were going to be working on it. there was nothing given out in writing, and there were no promises as to when they would, they said they would be back at the end of September, the beginning of October, to meet with Tri-Town again. They did meet with several groups, including one group had previously opposed the development of the base. You were getting various reports from the group, the meetings, but what was basically being told was that that Starwood had indicated that they were not going to go to the town meetings. But either change the plan or change the legislation. They're going to submit the changes to legislation themselves, directly to the legislature. On October 7th, they had another meeting. Starwood came in and gave a presentation to the board of directors. Rick was present. They announced, could I have a copy of the one
Take this.
Okay, yep. They basically confirmed what the rumors had been. They believe commercial development is not feasible at this time. It will be done later in the project. No time frame has been given. Residential development will be sped up without regard to the phases in the 2005 plan. Starwood is developing revision to the Tri-Town, to the SSTT DCC legislation to change the structure. And the board make up the board of directors, the roles of the towns, the roles of the Tri-Town. They will present a copy of this draft legislation and the revised plan to the Tri-Town and the towns in late October for their comments, not approval, just comments. In late November, they plan to submit it to the legislature, to change legislation, which would give them the authority to change the plan. A Tri-Town director asked if Starwood would work with Tri-Town to draft these legislation revisions. Mr. Glantz, who was the vice president of Starwood, refused. It was also stated they have no intention of going to town meetings. They did set up a meeting with Weymouth Town Council. Somebody then said they should do the same with Rockland and Abington. They indicated that. There was discussion of trying, they should meet with all three towns combined because of what, there's many common interests. There was no indication of any interest in doing that by Starwood. They're going to transfer governmental non-school functions, permits, zoning, police, and fire will be transferred from Tri-Town to the town in which that activity occurs. Right now, for example, police and fire are taken care of by Weymouth for the whole base. This would mean that Abington would be responsible for its own portion of the base, for police, fire, building permits, etc. Towns will receive the tax revenues from the Southfield land in that town. Now, the question is, how much revenue is that going to be? And with one special problem is there's already 20 children attending Weymouth schools. South Shore Tri-Town Development has been funding that, but there's been some disagreements on that. With increased residential development, that cost is going to increase. At some point, some of the students may live in Rockland, and it appears now there's a potential they may live in Abington. So those towns would have to obviously subsidize any residents of their towns going to Weymouth schools. But the other concern I have is with only residential development, there will not be enough funds to properly fund the cost of the children in the Weymouth schools. I mean, at least my experience has been residential only does not pay for itself. That basically residential development, I think the old theory has been for every dollar dollar you spend in services, you get about 95 cents back especially because of school costs. Yes, Barbara?
Would they have no commercial at all?
They will develop it at some point. That is all that has been said.
What has been done to this point for commercial?
Basically, very little. There's some permits have been given out, but nothing has been built. But the plan had been that before they could go to stage B, to phase B, they had to have a 300,000 square feet up.
Which they don't have.
They don't have. I believe L&R did go to the board of directors in 2011, said they'd like to change the plan in a similar way. The board of directors said, no, you have to develop the commercial. Also, one other thing that applies to that, when we get the land from the Navy, it's under the so-called BRAC law set up by Congress, which required the major purpose of giving the properties to the town, to the communities, was job development. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons the first plan was more heavily commercial, because you wanted to create jobs.
And they mean ongoing jobs, not just jobs to build the...
Ongoing jobs.
Okay.
Ongoing jobs. Starwood would... So the whole question on the non-government and non-school functions being transferred and the question of school children, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. Starwood said it will assume responsibility to finance and build the water wastewater system. Existing rules and regulations for the development Starwood will require, or the legislation require, the Board of Directors to change the existing rules and regulations, for example, the styles of housing and so forth, to meet market conditions. The Tri-Town will be changed to go from 5 members of the Board of Directors, 2 Weymouth, 2 Rockland, 1 Abington, to include 2 selected by the state and 2 chosen by the Southfield residents. Well, that may sound good in theory. At the moment, there's 278 residents. So that would give them equal voting with Weymouth, which has 60,000 residents. And they have legal members of Weymouth. I mean, something needs to be worked out to give them representation. We've given them some on the advisory board, but I think that we need to take a look at that. In my opinion, these proposed changes have been developed by Starwood with little or no input from the 3 towns, their residents, Tri-Town, or the 2 regional planning authorities, Old Colony Planning Council out of Brockton, or MA Metropolitan Planning Council out of Boston. What I've heard from both those groups is nobody's talking to them. Starwood is not talking to them. I think Starwood's going to continue operating that mode. There was a Globe article on the Globe South, I think last week, saying Starwood had canceled plans to build a golf course that's been planned to be built partly in Abington. Rick, has Starwood ever notified us? Oh, he's not there. I don't think Starwood has ever notified us that they plan to cancel that, or what they plan to do with the land. That doesn't give me I just think we're not getting any time, or we don't have very much time to review what they need to do. We don't have any information. And I don't think they're going to pay, even if we give comments, I don't think they're going to pay attention to them. I believe the towns were promised and put in the legislature that we would have control over changes to the plan and changes to the legislation. I think the town of Abington needs to go on record that that is our position and that is unchanged in case it goes to the legislature. The Starwood has worked closely with the newspapers. They have the Ledger and probably the Enterprise behind them, saying their changes are good. It was interesting when they had the meeting on October 7th, the slides they showed. They did not give out the slides until after the presentation was completed. But when you came out, if you went to a store, you found out the contents of the slides were in the Brockton Enterprise or the Patriot Ledger. I feel that we need to say that we have to be involved in this process, and I think we have to state it, because otherwise I think we are going to get, I hate to use this term, steamrolled.
Go ahead.
At one point in time, we would receive money during certain phases.
Yes.
How does this plan that they're coming up with now change that, or does it change it, or have they not stated?
One portion does not change. There are funds they have to give the 3 towns as a whole communities. That still got to be done. And they have said they would do that. I'm trying to find out where the paper, it is in here. However, the second thing is we get each year is a portion of the excess revenues, which means what is available after they pay. I don't know if we've started receiving it yet, but what is available after they pay for the ongoing expenses. Abington would only get 12% of that because we only have 12% of the land. And actually, from my point of view, to be honest with you, that is fairly good because much of the land we have up there is wet. But right now, they're supposed to give us $1,597,308 in host community fees. They have given us about half of that, $737,000. Rick has this whole presentation if you want. I think he can arrange to get you people to receive copies of it. I think that will remain intact. However, I think the excess funds would basically, in my personal opinion, they would disappear because they will be turning money, each town will be raising its own taxes. And the problem is that going to meet our costs? And especially what is going to happen in West Weymouth on the school children. I just think that is a potentially major problem.
Joe, a question I have. What right, if you will, does Starwood have to go about and seek these changes without the 3 towns approving it? Is there somewhere in an agreement that that legally they can do this?
I think they can submit something to the legislature if they want to submit something to the legislature.
Okay.
And they would hope that they could get the support saying that, well, this is the way to get the project going, we need more, get us some, development done and resolve the problem. They do have, my position is, I have grave concerns on a whole bunch of items on this thing. I could list them all. I think the most important thing is, though, we're not going to be given time to review it, to have input to it. And I think we need to say we got to have that input. The three towns have got to have input into it and an approval right. Otherwise, even with what they have talking about now, some of the things and what they talk about now look good. But if they do this once, what does prevent them from doing it again 2 years from now? If we lose that right to have an input, what you've done is basically turn that project over to the developer. And I think that would be a disaster.
Sean, did you?
It's more so just general comments and then possibly a question for you, Mr. Shea. I'm not certain if we've each had a chance to read the auditor's report from May of 2013, which was fairly scathing.
Yes.
Of the Tri-Town development and L&R. But what was most notable in there is that L&R had petitioned for the village center, which was a fundamental shift. I believe, Joe, was fundamental shift from commercial, saying commercial wasn't viable, residential is the way to go, commercial.
And we agreed to that in 2005.
Which is something that Starwood would have. I guess herein lies the challenge, as someone in my professional life chases legislation frequently. Which legislator is going to sponsor this proposed legislation?
I don't know. I hear rumors, but I don't know.
Well, so I guess to that, this is a little more rhetorical. So to that point, I suppose that every taxpayer in the town of Abington in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has the right to voice their concerns over any changes because they have access to their elected official to say no or yes. Mm-hmm. Notwithstanding any of that, I think there are some, as pointed out in the auditor's report, and some of it is contested and some of it is non. Is that there are some changes that fall outside of this that should kind of pop into kind of our common dialogue, if you will. Quite honestly, I don't have a personal opinion on Article 6. I agree that we should kind of have a reservation of our rights as it relates to any use of that particular space and any kind of structure. But just to be clear, the acts of, let's see, I think it was Chapter 301 and Chapter 303, respectively, of 1998 and 2005, I think it was, that kind of set up and structured the South Shore Tri-Town Development Corporation. Those remain intact, and then as Mr. Shea pointed out, whatever draft of legislation, I mean, it's going to have to go through a lengthy process in order for it to go in any direction. The auditor's report is going to be kind of like a Molotov cocktail and kind of explode that if someone wants to go in a direction to say, hey, we need to have some level of change. I don't think that a private business should have the rights or say and should occupy certain controls. I equally don't think it's prudent for town planning, and I'm not representing myself as a town planner, but to have 3 separate police, fire, EMS, taxing, permitting, et cetera, in one community, if you will. I think it needs to have some level of ubiquity. I also don't know, I can't answer this, and I would look at the moderator or someone who's familiar with kind of municipal law to answer this question. How binding is Article 6? Is it more just a...
That's kind of where I was going.
Sean has indicated to me that he thinks this may, and may be told, is going to be basically a sensitive meeting vote. I mean, if that is the case, instead of a motion as a sensitive meeting vote, I'm going to go with that. I want something on record from the Abington Town Meeting. I think it is important that we give a message to our legislatures and also the other legislatures. I assume, Sean, that Starwood has identified, with its resources, identified legislations who are willing to file this and who will back it. And I assume they're working the State House very heavily. That's my personal opinion.
I find personally no harm in a sense of the meeting to say whether or not folks, want to keep control, not keep control. But it ultimately, in my opinion, again, it ultimately comes down to those folks who are going to talk to Jeff Deal, our legislator in our neck of the woods, to say this is what our opinions are and how we need to get this corrected.
But I'm looking to do more than just talk to Jeff and Senator Keenan or Representative Nyman from Rockland. I'm looking for the Abington Town Meeting to take a position, which would mean that for other legislators in other parts of the state they would be in effect overriding the opinions of the
The town
town.
itself, right.
I mean, Jeff Deal on his own and Senator Keenan on his own are not gonna achieve anything. If Starwood can go in and make a good case, and there's a whole series of other issues with this whole thing that need to be resolved. But if they can go in and make it something that sounds plausible to the legislatures, the legislature has been known to pass things at the last moment. They have done it many times in the past. And then we find out it's a nightmare. I don't want to be, I would like to us to go on record so that anybody who takes that position to back this would have to be saying, in effect, we're going against what the towns, and I would hope we get some of the things out of Rockland and Weymouth, but we guess the towns want. And again, I would, if at all possible, say, even if they said it's a motion, but it's basically, it has really no teeth, that's fine. I prefer to have a motion
We'd like
passed.
something on the books to
Yeah,
show
something on
what
the
the
books.
town. I know, Rick, you wanted to,
No, let him.
do you want to come up? You can, and then,
For what it's worth, I wanted to agree with what Joe's presentation is, and although I don't have a vote of the Board of Selectmen to do so, I'm very confident that you would get a unanimous vote. In fact, you might get a unanimous vote within a week or two on the same subject. And I think something we have to be cognizant of, and this goes to Mr. Tyler's remarks too, is that this is a government agency, Tri-Town, that represents 3 government agencies that are in theory supposed to be representing the people of those communities, and I believe that it does. And you have this is not a criticism, but you have a venture capital firm that is looking to essentially usurp the governmental agencies involved here by going over their heads to the state legislature. And I think as much as there may be some, whether we can maybe disagree with some of the comments in the auditor's report, but whether or not the organization is as efficient as it should be, I don't think government, as you know, in America is designed to be efficient. It's designed to be participatory, and the effort in this legislation is to completely undermine that, and it undermined the voice of the local communities and the people. So I think the binding effect, there isn't any, but it is exactly the kind of message that should be sent to our legislators, and something that our legislators can bring, put in their pocket when they deal with their colleagues. So.
understood. Chad, did you have another question?
I did. What has Starwood said will happen if this doesn't pass? So they're
Basically,
coming and saying it's not
the
working.
project will come to a halt. That's what they've said.
The entire development there will come to a halt?
That's basically what they have said. What that means, they start, I mean, they have firms that are down there building houses. I don't know, I assume what they would mean is we wouldn't go in and try and do any further development than anything that's already ongoing. I really don't know. I don't know what their plans are. Would they just step away and walk away from the entire base? I don't know, they could. I don't think, though, I think we have to go on the assumption is they want to get something out of it, and they were going to be willing to, and hopefully they'd be willing to compromise. We had similar problems with L&R back in 2005, that they were very pushy on certain things. For example, the town of Abington said, and Weymouth said, we do not want you going to phase 2 until you have constructed the parkway, because that will get some of the traffic off 18. And they were very unhappy about that. Well, we don't need to do that. We shouldn't have to do it. Because our concern was that if you don't do it before phase 1 ends, you're never going to do it. And we're going to have all that traffic sitting on 18. None of it's going to be going to Rockland, none of it's going to the expressway. We also had a problem with them because we requested them to define how many housing units, how many houses the 855 units would contain. I think we came up with a figure of approximately 7,500 because we were worried that could 2,800 units end up be 12,000 people. And L&R was very unhappy with that. As a matter of fact, I know they were very unhappy with me personally at one point, basically saying I was a roadblock. I think we have to do what we think is best for Abington. I can't predict what they're going to do, but I don't think there's any guarantee what they're going to do no matter what. I mean, if this plan is if these changes in this plan are approved, I hate to be cynical, but could they go in and try and make as much profit as they can in the next 3 years and just walk away? next 5 years. I mean, that's one of the concerns you have in the commercial, saying later.
Right, well, it's giving basically the keys over to them.
Yeah,
So
and
go
that
ahead,
is my
and the
personal
town just
opinion,
has to-
yes. Do we need changes? Yes. Do I think there's problems, indicated the audit? Sean, part of the issue is the audit we covered 2008 to 2011. Since then, there have been changes made there. And I think, hopefully some of the changes are going to reflect it. I think we obviously have to make changes. That's why my articles do not say oppose any change or any legislative change. I just want to have a right to have a voice in it. And I think one of the things that disturbed me greatly was when the board of directors, remember the board of directors said at the October 7th meeting, will you work with us on this? And Bob Glantz refused. Basically, we'll send you the legislation, you can give us your comments. Barbara?
I am just wondering if you've talked to Rockland or Weymouth, if they'll be putting forth similar,
I'm not positive. Kevin, I think Donovan's trying to arrange a Freetown meeting. I know at one point, supposedly there was a meeting between Mr. Glantz and the chairman of the Rockland Board of Selectmen. And Mr. Glantz said what his plans were verbally. And what I've heard secondhand is that Mr. Kimball said to him, we'll shoot you down at town meeting. So I don't.
Could just so you know, the Starwood representatives are meeting with the Rockland Board of Selectmen next Monday, and we have scheduled a special meeting, the Board of Selectmen, on the 28th to meet with the representatives from Starwood also, so.
I can't guarantee what the other towns are gonna do.
Thank you.
I think we are trying to work together, Rick, I think, to get some kind of commonality between us, because, I mean, there's too much danger if they just talk to each town. You don't pick up something that impacts you. And going back to one thing Sean said earlier, once you start treating the place as three separate entities, what you then have the risk of is pitting one town against another.
Yeah, yeah.
that was my
If
concern.
Weymouth needs a sewage plant and a wastewater plant there, their obvious thing will be to put it as far out from the center of Weymouth as possible.
Right.
Which means that we could very be our area. Or somebody says to Abington, well, this could help you with some of your issues on sewage.
We could drive a wedge between
Yeah,
us
you
and.
can play one town versus the other town, or even not even play it, but you're not looking at the joint issues. Traffic is an issue on 18, but you don't want Weymouth, or, that's not an issue for Rockland, but it is for Weymouth and Abington.
Okay. Does anyone here on the committee have any other questions or comments that they want to address to Mr. Shea about this?
Anybody have further comments or questions, give me a call if you want a copy of it. I mean, we're gonna be meeting with Starwood will be in here on October 28th.
That's what I just heard too. With you here, you guys have seen the two articles. Would anyone want to make a motion for our recommendation to, what we do usually is we recommend whether to recommend the town meeting approve this article or not? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Are we talking about Article 5 and 6?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is to recommend approval of Article 5 and 6. Good second, Sean, you said that? Okay, discussion? Okay, all those, we're gonna take them both at the same time. All those in favor of recommending that the town approve Articles 5 and 6 as written? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Mr.
Joe.
Shea. Thanks for coming in,
All right. I mean,
putting that all together.
well, I'm gonna try and do some more work on it, because you get all the issues I'm aware of on it, because
Well, I imagine there'll be more discussion on town floor. People will wonder what this is all about,
the
so.
problem, the thing I wanna see is discussion and negotiation with Starwood, not just going ahead to go to the legislature and hope they can get something passed. That's a frightening thought. Especially because even the good things that we think may be good in this, there's no guarantee that they could not change it again if they think it's their interest.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
very
coming in.
much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so that's Article 5 and Article 6. Article 7 is also a petition, well, it's not, I guess, well, it was brought forward by Griffin's Dairy Study Committee. Let me read it to you a second. So Article 7 says, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds the sum of $2,500 to mow the grass at Griffin's Dairy per previous approvals from the Abington Conservation Commission, or take any other action relative thereto. If you could come up, Rick, a second. If you guys don't mind, this was brought forward, like I said, by Griffin's Dairy Study Committee, and I spoke with Mr. Richard Donovan, with Cracker Donovan. Cracker couldn't attend tonight, but if you guys don't mind, I'll tell you what our conversation, I asked if it was okay if we talked about it without him here, and he said yes. And Rick, you might be able to add to this. First of all, what he's telling me is that, first of all, the 2,500, he's not sure if 2,500 is the right number, if it was 2,800, but anyway, that's what he put, that's what's on here, so it's for 2,500. That was based upon, they were seeking bids at some point, some years ago, to see what it would cost to, a one-time cut the grass that he said is about, waist high, knee high, or something like that right now. And the idea is, the cost associated with it would be 2,500 or 2,800 is a one-time cost. The grass there has not been cut down in years. He said it basically is to clean up the mess of the grass that is there right now, with the idea of cutting it down so that the new grass can grow. It could then apparently be used for dairy, like for dairy farm or whatever, to feed the cows. What he said is that, again, it would be a one-time cost. It wouldn't probably have to be done again for another 2 or 3 years. Do you guys have any, that's basically the information that I got. He's seeking $2,500 for that one-time cost to cut that grass back. Go ahead.
So that would be done by a private person then on town property, not the highway department on town property?
Well, what he had said, and maybe Rick can comment to that. He said that he was basing that upon, he went out and got a ballpark figure from Delpreet in Rockland, I guess. So that is what he was thinking. He would imagine he would have to go out to bid. But your question is, could that be done by the town?
Well, I'm just wondering if,
On
I
town.
know that it's town property, right?
Yeah, I don't know how that, can you comment
Because
on
we have that
that?
problem with the ball fields and the, as far as the mowing in the past, when mowing has come up as an issue.
How does that work out? How would that be?
Well, I'm reluctant to comment on lawns, because if you looked at mine, you'd probably wouldn't think much of my expertise, but the article as it's written does not exclude the possibility of it being done in-house. My concern would be, first of all, we would have to seek some, even though it's below procurement requirements for even other than good business practices, we would seek some multiple quotes at least on doing the mowing. Because of the length of it, I assume, obviously, you can't just mow it, you have to remove it, you have to hay it, you can't just leave it there. So
It would be
that's all
removing it,
part of it.
yes.
So,
According
okay.
to Mr. Donovan, it would be cutting it and removing it.
So whether, and I think what we would probably do is seek multiple quotes, and if as well as determine what we could do internally. But again, removing, I think you'd want somebody who's relatively expert in doing this rather than have as you probably know, our staffing levels at our highway department
Well, that's
is
what
extremely
I didn't know if
thin.
that would cause union issues.
Yeah, not so much that, it's really just a matter of how, we've, at this point, due to staffing and injuries, it's only about 4 full-time people in the highway department at the moment, so it would be kind of difficult to take that on. And again, the issue isn't so much, I think, the mowing, it's the removal. So we would see quotes, and realistically, we would see if there was any possibility of the ability to do it in-house too, and but the article as written doesn't exclude that as a possibility.
Would there be, the article also does not reference a funding source?
If you look at the latest and greatest final warrant to be posted,
Okay, yeah.
it does.
Let's have it in there. 'cause I
It does
read
say
it.
specifically to vote from, transfer from free cash. And
To see if the town will transfer from free cash. Okay,
Right,
good. All
right.
right, I may have read the old one. That's where my notes were
Right.
when I spoke with Cracker. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
to transfer from free cash, the sum of $2,500 to mow the grass at Griffin's Dairy. Okay, thank you. Yes, Sean?
What's the purpose?
The purpose is to clean up the mess.
What's the net result?
It would be cut down so that new grass could, it would clean it up, and it would, the goal from talking to Cracker was to cut it down so that new grass could grow, which then could become feed for potential other use. If it's going to be a dairy farm, I don't know what the use of the property is going to be, but go ahead.
Is there a predetermined other use?
I do not believe
No,
so.
not that I'm aware of yet.
And if I just one last piece, is, what is the previous approval of the Abington Conservation Commission that's referenced? And then what would the word approval mean in the context of this article?
That would have to do with the delineation of wetlands and what is accessible for cutting specifically.
So that part of that area which is accessible for cutting?
Right, I'm not intimately familiar with the order of conditions or delineation of the Conservation Commission, but that's my understanding of what was done, I don't know, within the past year or so.
The Conservation Commission must
Yeah.
have made approval as to what part is
All right.
could be cut or could be
Mhm.
used. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else you want to add, anybody? Okay. Regarding Article 7, I'd entertain a motion with regard to what our recommendation should be on Article 7. Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay. Anyone want to second that? I'll second the motion to approve. Now we can, any discussion?
In the absence of anything that's...
Sean, could you speak up, please?
I can stand up. In the absence of a predetermined or pre-described use or purpose, I don't know that it's spending good money. Because we love the botanicals, they're gonna grow again. So
Mhm.
unless we're gonna have a means to continue it, and I'm all for keeping things from being unsightly,
Mhm.
I don't have enough that I can make a real meaningful vote on this particular article.
Okay.
The reason why I voted for it is because that grass is getting high, you're gonna have rats living out there and all that stuff. If you keep the grass low, you're not gonna have that type of animal living out there. And plus, if somebody really wanted to bring, say, some cattle in there to graze, it'd be more likely that they would come there with it mowed than having to mow it themselves.
Go ahead, Matt.
I haven't been by there. Is it unsightly? Is the grass very high?
Yeah, it's pretty high, I think, at least on me, maybe waist length, maybe you knee length. So it's pretty, it's,
And where there are wetlands, are there dangers if someone a child wanders into there or something of that sort?
that hasn't been outlined to me as an issue, but it's a good question. That issue hasn't been brought to my attention, at least.
Yes, Mr. Riley, you got a comment?
Can I just try to add
Of
some
course you can.
information from me attending some older hearings regarding Griffin's Dairy?
I appreciate that.
From what I understand, it's, as most of us know, Griffin's Dairy was a farm many, many years ago, so they used to regularly hay the field, mow the field. And then when the farm was turned over to the town, all mowing ceased. As the hay continues to grow, the grass continues to grow, you get a couple of issues. One is that the existing wetlands, which are pretty much in certain designated areas, if you don't continue to mow, the wetlands can start to spread, which then takes away your upland, your usable land that you might want to use for whether it be a farm use or recreation use or community garden use. So one of the reasons that there were various people that wanted to go in and mow the field down was to kind of bring it to its natural condition, its normal, its regular condition, and try to preserve the value of the property for the town and the future opportunities for various uses for the town. The reason I had to go back to Conservation Commission is because you're allowed to use it for agricultural purposes and mow and hay, and you can actually, there's more leniency under the wetlands laws if you're using it for agricultural or haying purposes. But because they had stopped doing it, the right to do that ended, so they had to go back and reapply for the permit to go back and rehay the field. So I believe that's what they're doing, is kind of restarting what they had done many years ago. And as Sean was asking, what the town does with it in the future, I don't think there's been any definitive answers,
No,
but
it hasn't.
without maintaining the property, you start restricting your use in the future.
Go ahead, John.
So with that said, this is just kind of those funny questions. So as a town manager, wouldn't you just kind of compel the highway department, say, hey, I'm gonna add $2,500 to your budget, mow the field?
They,
It becomes a recurring
they might
fee.
need haying equipment to do
Well,
it.
here's the point, is that, let's pretend, I work for him, and I'm responsible for this particular area. He says, hey, listen, make this happen. I say, okay, I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna use good business practice, and I'm gonna put this out to bids under $5,000. Hey, can you do this for under $5,000? Yes, you can. Great. How much is it gonna cost? $1,000. We'll get that done. Every year I'll make sure it's done. Problem solved. The town bought the land. We paid a lot of money for it.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't, I don't know what the use is gonna be. I
We
can never
don't.
even predispose what the use is, and I lived right around the corner for it for many years. I still have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But to that end, it seems really silly to have it be in a separate article versus just having it be part of the working plan for a town department.
So just to follow up on that, so since we're not doing it currently, I would assume the money is not currently budgeted for in
Correct.
the highway budget. So, and it doesn't have to be it hasn't been done for years, so, and it doesn't have to be done every year. So this is probably why it's on as an article.
I know, I respect that, but I suppose that if it becomes part of the work plan, it becomes part of the
Yes.
budgetary process instead of
Right, it's not there
budgeting by
now.
article, if you will, piecemeal.
Right.
It would just be kind of included within the expectation of, hey, this department from this point forward, this is what's expected of you. I mean,
That could be a go, in other words, I think what you're saying is that could be a go forward, that might be the right way to do it, go wing
It could
forward.
be. I think that we've heard some compelling reasons to do it and protect the investment first and foremost. Second is to preserve the type of environment that it is.
Do you wanna
I would just say,
comment on
in principle, I agree with everything you just said. However, they're looking for something to happen sooner rather than later right now, and as the budget process is over with, so, but I don't disagree with you at all, Sean.
that? Either one, you guys, I heard from both.
Go ahead, Rick.
My feeling is, if you're gonna hay it, you're gonna have to get certain equipment and everything else, so it's gonna cost you an expense. You have somebody come in and hay it, they also take the hay out of there, and it's done. Then maybe the highway department can maintain it.
And that's precisely right. I agree with that.
Barbara,
That
thank you.
was kind of
Barbara?
my question, isn't, I'm sure there's people that need hay, and so we have hay. And is that, I'm
Maybe
wondering
we
if
do.
that's figured into this 25 or possible 28, well, for the articles purposes, it's 2,500. Do we know if that,
It's baked into the.
Yeah,
price.
I don't know if,
Into the price.
what, I'd have to,
Yeah.
I don't know if that was part of your conversation with Mr. Donovan or not. Obviously, there's a value to, the hay, and so the value of whatever contract is whatever the town pays for the service plus whatever they can take from that, and that would, but I'm presuming that is part of what Mr. Donovan's conversations were with potential vendors.
Well, just because the fact that he said it was to cut it and remove it, I would imagine that, the cost associated with cutting would be offset by those who provide their bids, by what they're going to make out of it, and basically what you end up with is the net. I mean, we could certainly ask for that.
in addition to that, I don't know that,
Gotcha.
just to what Sean's point, I don't know that, we've had a hard time maintaining the property that we're asking the Park and Rec Department and Highway Department to maintain right now. And you were just saying
Right.
that.
But in the future, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but in the future, to the extent that there may be a few dollars put in the highway department budget, they might oversee the operation of a vendor to do the same thing, not necessarily with their own manpower, so.
So go ahead.
At one point, there was a golf course that rented that property, and they took care of mowing it and everything. I don't know if it was a Rockland Golf Course or Strawberry Valley. Because they had a shed there, and they were using it for a driving range. And they did mow it, but that's when it
That's
was
not been
down
yours
low.
yet. Go ahead.
How does that, just, because I remember at one time it was an issue to hire private companies to work on town property. During the time with,
There was a time when the town reduced the budget of,
the Park and Rec.
Park and Rec, which used to maintain the field, but before we combined those, there was definitely issues, union issues, issues about insurance issues, about private individuals, or definitely private individuals going and mowing fields and that type of thing. I don't recall whether, I thought there wasn't an issue if we were going to bid it out some, but there was no money to pay for it.
Okay.
But it
So it
certainly was,
wasn't
it certainly was,
contractors, it was
the
just
idea, the
private.
talk was, well, let's just get a bunch of townspeople down there with their ride-on lawnmowers and let's mow the lawn. Let's mow the fields. That was determined, at least by the prior administration, to be something that would be not a good idea.
Chaotic.
Yeah.
Chaotic, dangerous, if
Yes.
someone threw a blade, what if
Right.
something
And that's
happened?
coming back to me
Do you remember
too,
that?
It was, that was.
But if you hired
Right,
somebody,
that's-
but we just didn't have any money to
paying for
hire
it.
them.
This was for volunteers.
This is my
That's what
recall.
it was at the time.
So if that is my recollection of it, then, the same way, we bid out, when roads are getting fixed and that type of
Right.
thing, you may
I
bid
was
out something that we
thinking of
can't physically do.
Union issues with
No.
volunteer is what
It
it
was-
was.
I believe it was
and that's-
volunteers. So, all right, any further question, sorry, sorry, Matt, I didn't see you, go right ahead.
A question, if we are entertaining to do this now, is the town entertaining looking at what we will do once the property is clean? If there are uses and potential revenue streams at that point?
It is my understanding that the town has been looking at that issue for years. That's not a new thing.
Yes.
But that creating some consensus on what that might look like has been more of a problem. Yes. I mean, I don't
Potentially,
know
I
what the future is. I know there's a lot of different needs that have been expressed from playing fields to maintaining an agricultural presence there to passive recreation, and I know it's I would personally, I think it's something that we should try to get some, look at getting maybe a small grant to get some professional expertise to do maybe a conceptual plan that might meet some of the, various competing needs, goals of some of those needs, so that we can at least put together some consensus on what the future might look like. Because right now, it just seems like there's a lot of competing interests for very limited space in Abington in general, so. I just said absolutely nothing, did I? But that's.
You really
but
can't tell, I mean,
Yeah. I'm trying to be helpful, but I wish I could give you more of a definitive issue here.
We don't know.
Correct.
So whether it's
There's no-
mowed or not mowed,
There's
I don't
no
think we know.
Right, but-
immediate use whether we mow it. or
Correct,
not.
but my understanding
Concerns
is,
for mowing it now are
right.
more safety-based.
and according to
Wetland
Sean,
based and-
maintaining future options from what Mr.
Aesthetics,
Right.
all that. So the motion on the floor is to recommend approval for Article 7, which would be using $2,500 of free cash for this purpose. All those in favor of recommending approval of Article 7? All those against? All those abstain? Thank you, there's one abstention. All right, thank you, guys. So we are going to recommend approval of that, too. Okay. Thank you all for your input on there. Article 7, I'm sorry, we just did Article 7. Article 8 and Article 9 are brought forth by the school committee. We have the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. I don't know if either one of you guys want to come up. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Peter
having me.
Schaefer. Thank you so much for coming tonight. You know everybody?
Yes, I do, and thank you for taking the time to have me here to explain the story behind the articles.
Okay, thanks. If you don't mind, yeah, make sure you can see. We'll start, if you want me, I can read Articles 8?
Sure.
Okay, so Article 8 says, to see if the town will vote to establish a revolving fund pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, to be known as the Homeless Transportation Revolving Fund, to which shall be credited reimbursements received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for so-called, quote, homeless transportation costs, unquote, homeless transportation, unquote, costs, which fund may be expended for costs of providing such transportation said fund to be expended by the school committee without further appropriation in the amount not to exceed $100,000 for fiscal year 2014, or take any action relative thereto.
The story behind this is that there was an audit that was done on expenditures that were made in FY13 on student homeless transportation. School systems in the Commonwealth are required to provide transportation to students that are designated as homeless back to Abington, if they were previously attending school in Abington or attending school continuously in Abington. That's an unanticipated mandate from the state, and one of the things that the state has done to accommodate that unfunded mandate was to audit the books done in FY13 and then provide reimbursement based on what you spent for FY14. And so that's the amount that we receive, and the $100,000 is to make sure that once this account is established, there's enough room in it to spend it appropriately within what is approved at town meeting. Another piece of information is that our federal grants the week before this were actually underfunded by about $55,000. That week we met and talked about what are we going to do in the school department to absorb the $55,000 shortfall in our federal grants. And before we made a decision, it was the following week, and we were deliberating on it. It was the following week that we received this information from the state that we were receiving this money. We can show you the spreadsheets on the federal grants to show the deficit, and we're hoping that this offsets that decrease in funding. So it's not additional funding, because on top of that, we continue to have to transport the students that are designated as homeless. There doesn't really seem to be I'll call it a statute of limitations on how long the state is considering children or families homeless. It's been an indefinite, God bless you, it's been an indefinite period of time. So, and when that function for a school system in Massachusetts will end, I have no way of knowing.
So for right now, anyone any child who is deemed this way, and we have to provide the transportation, we do, as we
Correct.
must. And this is for reimbursement that would come, say, for instance, the following year or whatever, would go into this revolving account, which then could be expended to offset
that
the
bill.
cost of,
Correct.
again, providing this transportation that is required.
Because we have students that are now, we don't send a school bus to pick them up, we send a van to pick them up, and the van has to be individually scheduled for that family, and they're living as distances as far away as the New Bedford area.
Go ahead.
And it would be a revolving account that the money could only be expended on homeless transportation.
Correct.
And currently, we're paying that out of the school budget, or there is
Correct.
there is budget for it now, or there is not? There is,
There's
There's not a line item, but we have to pay a bill.
okay.
So something else.
So it falls into the other transportation items, bills that we have to pay, whether it's special education or regular education transportation.
Go ahead, Sean, you had a question?
It's kind of like bells and suspenders for me. If we already pay it and we're gonna get reimbursed for it, this is just an earmark for you? Is it, because the question is going to be, is it an attempt to indemnify your current budget, and you have this, because you take a set of seed money, everything that's gonna be inside of it is going to be reimbursed. If you expend it, it gets reimbursed, and it can grow to a certain level. Up to $100,000 is currently predicted here. It's currently in the school budget. It was less of a question, more rhetoric for me, just to kind of hear my voice, I suppose. It just takes it out of the school budget and gives a separate little component.
Well, you triggered in my mind a great point by talking about that. The money the money is earmarked from the state to reimburse schools for the costs of this specifically, but we don't get a check from the state. The town gets the check from the state. So in
This is
order
the
to
general
appropriately spend that money coming from the state to the town, there needs to be
In your budget.
a vehicle to do that, and that's what this provides.
Well,
Go ahead, speak, go ahead.
this becomes a Rick question then. If it comes back into the town coffers, the town coffers put it into the school budget every year, and based on your request for your budget every year, you guys say, hey, listen, we expended last year, your school committee sets your budget, and you say, we need X amount of dollars, and it becomes the typical process between the town and.
And I don't
Thank you,
answer Rick's
Felicia.
questions.
Just going to share this with you guys.
Sorry. This past year, so homeless transportation has been occurring for a number of years. It's grown. I think my first year, 6 years ago, we spent maybe $8,000 in homeless transportation, and it has grown over the years, really because of the economy. And we have to transport students not only that were living in Abington and are homeless living someplace else, but we cost share for families that live someplace else and are moved to, and considered homeless and moved to Abington and go someplace else for school. So we have homeless coming in and homeless going out. Last year, the state auditor, Suzanne Bump, took this on as an unfunded mandate for cities and towns and determined that it was an unfunded mandate. So this past fiscal year, with the governor's budget, it was the first time homeless transportation was ever reimbursed. So it was the first year that that's happened. In Abington, like many school communities, don't have a line item in their budget for homeless transportation because it's truly an unknown. We know how much our bus contract is going to, it's another one of the unknowns. We know how much our bus contract is going to be, and we can estimate what our special ed transportation is, but we absolutely can't estimate what homeless transportation would be. Because truly you get a call today, family became homeless last night, we have to provide transportation for them as soon as possible, which means within a couple of days. So in terms of the reimbursement, we are hoping in the future that that's a line item that the governor reimburses every year and is part of his budget, but it still has to be appropriated from the state. So on one hand, yes, it has this reimbursement that we're talking about that came this summer was from FY12, and it had already been spent, but we have an appropriate.
FY13.
Yeah, it was for because it was audited FY12 numbers, and we don't know what our homeless transportation will be going forward. So this is a way that provides that opportunity for us to be able to pay for the homeless transportation.
If I, Ms.
Yep.
Mario, and to speak to your point, Sean, effectively, yes, it does divert money that otherwise would go to the general fund. However, as Felicia pointed out, it is a new revenue source. It's not an existing revenue source per se that has historically been part of the town's budgeting process and revenue stream. So, so if, I can appreciate a conceptual issue with it, but it's not a financial issue in that sense.
Go ahead.
That's all good, but I suppose then in FY12, it was part of the school budget.
Yes.
And it was taken from the school's budget at that particular time without any hopes of reimbursement until 603 CMR 10 came out and said, hey, 10.09 section 2, let's give you some cash back. Follow the following rules, we'll give you some cash back. So I guess to that point then, it was part of the school's budget. I don't disagree with it, it's just, it's not a reoccurring piece, because you don't know if it's going to continue in perpetuity. It has to be voted every year by the legislators, part of the budget, and they can fund, so be it. And then your enterprise account or revolving account, rather, it may be for not, it may be for something. That's why I asked the question. It should just be considered part of the school budget, take the reimbursement, work it through with the town manager to get it back as part of your budget for next year. Because you don't know if you're gonna continue with that reimbursement. That was the only point. I don't have really a horse in this race. I just wanted to talk about it.
And I guess that's, let me just give you a scenario. Let's say it has cost, I'm gonna just use smaller numbers. Say the homeless transportation was $10,000 in the past, and there's been no line item for it, so it's coming out of your transportation costs that are already in your budget.
Yep.
In the go forward, if we got 10,000 back, that's gonna go into this revolving account. Would your transportation budget go down by 10,000? Or is this is an additional 10,000 potential revenue source if it continues to get reimbursed to pay for that? So your other transportation budget wouldn't go down based on that?
Correct. Our transportation budget, for example, this money there actually wasn't money in transportation.
Yeah.
Because, for the homeless transportation, in any year, because our transportation budget is pretty much our bus contracts.
Okay,
so
good then, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
bus contract and special education transportation, which is also a number that does move throughout the year. So there are other places.
We've been making adjustments.
We have to make adjustments.
You gotta pay a bill.
You gotta pay the bill. So if that means we can't buy chairs for the cracked chairs that have broken since the school year started. We don't do that because
We have an outstanding bill.
we have an
that
outstanding bill.
Unfunded
If we
mandate.
can't buy supplies, more custodial supplies that are budgeted for, then we have to shift it, and because we have to pay for the students to be transported.
And we have fluctuations in the special education transportation budget
Yep.
because students' placements change all the time.
Barbara, thank you.
So there's nowhere in your budget right now where you say, all right, so we've got the transportation, we've got this line item, that line item. There's nowhere in the budget right now where you're saying, we have to have some money somewhere for homeless transportation because we know we're mandated to pay it. We have to pay that bill. You don't even plan for that. You just know that when that bill comes, we're not gonna buy something or we're gonna cut back on something else. There's no spot in the budget where
We do not
that's-
have a line item per se in the budget for homeless transportation. And really, because that number fluctuates. I mean, we can start the school year off with 0 students, or during the budget season, we could have 0 students that are homeless. And then we could have 20, or we could start with 20 and then they're all placed within the first month of school. And I think as special education, it is something that fluctuates throughout the year.
Cindy, you had a question?
The last couple of years, what has been kind of your average? What have we come in? And I know, like you say, it fluctuates now,
Yep.
but just kind of where are we?
The FY '12 was the largest we had, and that was $53,000, and that was double, I think, what we had in FY '11. And the final numbers for FY '13, I want to say was about 30,000, and a number of those were in the spring of last year.
Felicia, maybe you should share with people what, for example, just so you have an idea of the fluctuation in the special education transportation account, the daily cost for a child who's in a wheelchair on a van, especially for students in wheelchairs.
With a monitor,
Yeah.
is $280 a day.
Does that fall under special ed?
Special ed
That's-
transportation.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
transportation.
Yeah.
So that's every single day to get the child to their educational programming, we're required to pay that bill.
So it can be that, or it can be
And if that
20
child's
bucks in a
absent,
taxi.
or if that child's absent for 2 weeks,
Still.
then we're not paying that.
Oh, right.
If they know that they're out. So that's how those numbers fluctuate. Or we have a student, we have students that are homeless that come from, we had one from Barnstable last year. We've had Boston, we've had students transported to New Bedford, Fall River, Plymouth, or Rockland, Brockton, Weymouth, so.
And Felicia mentioned the word monitor. If the child's medically fragile or they're prone to seizures, and during transportation, the person driving the vehicle can't observe those things and they have a medical condition, a monitor needs to be there. It's required medically on the van.
Cindy, I'm sorry, you had a question? Thank you.
I'm not saying that I disapprove of this, but in the past, when we've done revolving funds, I think we talked about the fact that we have to justify what's in there. And I think my reason for asking that question, if it was between 30 and 50, is 100,000 too much, so that at the end of the year, when they start looking at all our stuff, our accounting, we have to justify why did we put 100 and you've only had like 30,000, 50,000. So is this like a little higher than what it might need to be?
My understanding, I spoke with the town accountant when we came up with this number, and because it's, I think, and I don't want to speak for her, but I think because it's funded by, it has a funding source from the state, and it can only be appropriated for homeless transportation, it would be appropriated and then used for homeless transportation, then that number would be okay.
And you're not actually putting that
No.
money in there. It's allowed up to that amount.
Correct. That's actually to spend up to that amount in a year. So if you only collect, if there's only 25,000 in it, you can only spend 25,000.
And I
But
think
what
the
I mean
point-
is,
Go ahead.
we're not asking the town to put $1,000 into an account.
No.
That's how much you could collect from you could collect up to 100,000 from the state.
No, it's expend up to
You could
100.
expend up to 100.
There's no cap on the number they can collect, if there's a cap
Right.
on what they can spend. So they can actually get 200, arbitrary numbers, they can
Yep.
get $2 trillion in reimbursements, they can only expend 100,000.
Per year.
And that $2 million of
That still isn't making
And-
sense to me,
and
wait a
that-
minute.
and
If
that
you can
money
only
comes from the
expend,
state, Not the town doesn't put money into it.
if you could only expend 100,000,
Yep.
and the cost came to 125,000 for homeless transportation, you would then have to find 25,000 someplace else.
I think I have it better. The state is giving, let's just use easy numbers, it's 53,000. Let's say the state gives us $50,000. That goes in the general fund, we're then asking that general fund revenue to go into this revolving account, 50,000. So as a school department, even if homeless transportation costs 55,000, we can only spend the 50,000 that we got from the state. And if this year homeless transportation was only 25,000, we only could spend 25,000 out of it, and then we got reimbursed that 25, and then it builds up and may build up
So we're
over
saying
years.
it could
Carries
build
forward
up to
every year.
100,000.
We can spend up to, even if there's 125,000, we can only spend 100.
It's like having a checking account that you can't spend more than $100,000 out of that account to pay that bill.
Yeah.
But funding sources from the state would put the money in there. Obviously, you can't spend more than you have in that checking account, but there's a ceiling, maximum amount you could spend.
So
if
then you
had
get
it.
up to having 100,000 in that account.
You could have more than 100,000 in there, but if you're lucky enough to get more than 100,000 in reimbursement from the state, you could have 125,000 in, but you cannot expend without further appropriation 100,000. If you wanted to spend over 100,000, you either can't, or you have to get further appropriation, is that?
So so if there was,
Right.
so if there was additional, if it was a revolving account for $100,000 is the cap, and there was that you could spend out of it, and you built up to 125,000, that additional 25,000 doesn't get turned back over to the town.
It stays in.
And it can't be used for
Anything.
anything else.
Stay there, because
Has
you,
to
in one
stay at all.
fiscal year, you already spent the $100,000 that you have permission to spend. You'd have to go get more permission at a
Gotcha.
town assembly, town meeting, special meeting, whatever, to get the permission to spend the other 20 in that fiscal year.
Wait, in past administrations were not favorable towards things like revolving accounts. Could I ask the town manager, your,
Well, I'm not
Position
a
on-
huge fan in principle of peeling money off the general fund, but this is one of those areas where it's subject to large spikes, dips, and anytime you can
Mitigate
even out
that.
the impact of those spikes, I think it's a very good idea, and this is, one of those limited areas where I think it's helpful. I had mentioned, I know to this board earlier, in previous meetings about the possibility of maybe a veterans benefits type of fund, similar fund. I have since found out that would probably not be deemed appropriate by the Department of Revenue, because anytime you're taking money essentially off, diverting it from the cherry sheet, unless there's a specific ability to do it, like in this,
Okay.
it can't be done, but conceptually though, anytime you can avoid those peaks that are very difficult to plan for, we try to do that, and I think in this case, it accomplishes that goal.
thank you very much.
We're not necessarily believers in having multiple revolving accounts and different checkbooks either. We're just looking for the vehicle by which to appropriately spend homeless transportation money from the state on homeless transportation.
You guys, any other questions on this particular article? This is Article 8. Okay, I would entertain a motion for a recommend.
Second?
Okay, so the motion is to recommend approval of Article 8. Any discussion? And all those in favor? Okay, that's good. That's, all right, so recommend approval of that, yes, thank you, you guys. And also, we have you guys up here for Article 9. Article 9 is to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 4 of the October 2011 special town meeting to expand the purpose for which the funds may be expended from the, quote, masonry repairs schools to, quote, general repairs schools, or take any other action relative thereto. So it's to amend a vote taken back in October of 2011 on a particular article, Article 4, with regard to how we were designating purposes of funds or something like that.
In FY12, and my friend's gonna fill in the blanks if I miss something. In FY12, there was an appropriation of money to address really building envelope issues, water penetration issues, which we've had in Abington at multiple buildings, and the sense of urgency around that depends on the building. And as we're looking, we're excited about the possibility of new school construction and/or renovation. We don't want to spend that money unless we need to. This money's already here. We'd like to amend the language so that we've got the ability to spend it responsibly or not spend it, depending on the need. With the construction or renovation of schools, we might be closing schools, and we don't want to put money into a building that might possibly close.
Yes, Sean, go ahead.
This is actually a question for Sean. So if we have a scope of an article, right, we vote a scope of an article for a very specific purpose, use of funds. Procedurally, you need to vote to kind of repeal that particular article and put a different article vote ahead, or is this within the scope of the original intent of the article, which was for school building repairs?
That's a great question, Mr. Tyler. All of these articles and all these motions are gonna be reviewed by town council and town accountant, because, to see if there's an issue such as that. I don't think it's it's so much as a scope issue, much as we would wanna make sure that DOR doesn't want it to be a new separate vote, not just an amended vote.
It was part of the capital, it was an item listed on the capital items of that year. I don't know if that changes.
And it's not, obviously, it's not changing the amount that was approved, it's not changing this fiscal budget, it's just amending a prior vote. My guess is, as a moderator, I'd probably let it go and let the townspeople decide if they want to do that. But
We've had
Town council,
reviewed
as of,
these.
the end of last week, has reviewed this warrant and has not expressed any issues with that particular article.
So if you didn't hear that, town council has reviewed
No,
and
good,
approved
thank
it,
you.
so that's good. But
So,
thank you for asking.
and it's, it's with great respect when a town votes to spend money a certain way. If you adjust that even minimally, we just want to do it appropriately.
How much money is in that?
39,000 remaining.
Any further discussion on Article 9, questions? Go ahead,
All the
Chad.
masonry repairs done right now?
No, we've got a number of repairs. We've got repairs that we're concerned about, but if we can hold off on them till we know what direction we're going in with school building construction renovation, we want to do that. Some repairs were done. For example, the steps at the Frollo were done, and you may not intuitively understand that you would need to do steps as a part of a water penetration project. But behind the steps, there were cracks against the wall, and all of the water, when it rained, coming down off of the wall was actually leaching into the basement, or what's considered the first floor of that building, through the brick and the mortar. So we had to, that was a water penetration project, believe it or not. And then, so some work has been done, and we want to hold off on more work unless it's absolutely, we have those types of issues.
The Frollo and Center School are the two schools that need the most work around masonry. And after following this approval, we then had the approval the following spring for feasibility study. At that point, we really decided to just do emergency repairs to if there was water penetration, we wanted to stop that so we wouldn't lose the building. And if for some reason it takes 5, 6, 7 years, we still need those buildings to last. So we're.
No, I was gonna.
No.
Similarly to the Garaventer, we talked about this, and it was this group that made some suggestions about coming up with a contingency plan for that Garaventer, which I appreciate the input of this board, because we actually did that. We went home and did that after one of these meetings. Now you're talking about the Garaventer, but it's a similar situation. We don't want to spend the money unless we know we have to, just because we would be throwing good money after bad.
But there are repairs, though, that need to be done in the meantime.
That
For
don't fall
example,
under masonry.
correct. For example, another article, a part of the capital plan was Woodsdale roof. And we have had some significant roof issues at the Woodsdale that we've been able to patch. And so I would envision some of this money would be used to make repairs to buy us some more time, for example, on the Woodsdale roof.
The Woodsdale roof sprung a leak the week before school opened this school year. And it sprung the leak outside the main office in the hallway area all the way down halfway through the hallway. If that leak had penetrated a couple of feet this way, and it would have penetrated into the main office, it would have chewed up, or everything would have been wet in terms of the computer and the network, and what we would have needed, and it could potentially, if it was bad enough, would have even delayed the opening of that school building for this school year. So I'm not, saying the sky is falling, talking about falling roofs or anything, but that's actually what happened.
But kind of. Yes, Rick, go ahead.
But given the state the town's in, with all the employees it lost, for instance, the highway department's down 4 guys, 5 guys, that would go a long way to helping us put another employee back to work, rather than having it sitting over here waiting for something to happen. If it was in the capital plan, you're not gonna use it, I can't see sitting on it. You know what I mean? I would think that it should come back to the town to be reappropriated. That's just my opinion.
Well, from our position, the buildings need to be ready to go. We have a responsibility to educate the kids, and we just don't want to spend it with the potential that we'd be building or renovating and throwing good money away. So
I agree,
I can't pretend, we managed it responsibly, and that's why it's still there.
But I agree, you're gonna be looking for a school, it's gonna be big money. Simply turning back something like this to help the town would go a long way, I think, for the average person sitting out there thinking, geez, they get $39,000 they're sitting on just in case. We could put that to work in another department.
And these, of course, aren't operational dollars. These are,
They're not reoccurring funds, they're
Right.
funds
Correct.
that are in.
And we have, I've been sitting on this, and I really need to do roof repairs at Woodsdale. I mean, that's my next, if this.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're restricted to doing just masonry
Correct.
repairs, where you could very immediately use this for other type of repairs to keep the properties.
To the outside of the buildings to prevent water penetration, especially roof repairs at this.
So if you don't move this, if you're not able to use this, then you're going to need to ask for additional money for roof repairs. So this will be sitting in an account marked for masonry, and you will either turn it back to the town or not do masonry work that needs to be done, but then you will additionally need to ask for money for roof repairs.
if these were operational dollars, reoccurring funds, I, with great respect, understand what you're saying about people that the town needs to provide good service. But once you deplete these monies, there'll be no money the following year for that employee.
Yeah, hi, Cindy.
Just to speak to that too. I know, like you said about the Garavanta, I brought that up last year because that money is just sitting. And this money has been sitting, some of it used, some of it sitting. When last year, when we went through the budget, we had nickel and dimed every department, $5, $10, $100. We could have used that money for funding of an article. And then had that article money rather than we could have put that into the operating budget. We took monies from the operating budget to fund some articles. So there is a point that Rick is making that that money can be used, and like with the Garavanta or something like this, if that's an emergency that comes up, that's why we have stabilization, that we've been building those things up for items like that, at least in my mind, that's why we have stabilization. Not to keep a pot of money sitting there on the off chance that they're gonna need it. Because we took some money out of budgeting last year to fund articles, and we had $75,000 that could have funded those, and $75,000 that could have been less coming out of stabilization and funded some of the operating budget. And that's just my opinion, only one of all of us here. So I just have a little issue with that.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'd seek, you guys, if someone wants to present or a motion for recommendation on Article 9.
Make a motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
See, taking no action or even voting it down doesn't actually return the funds. It just
it just stays where they're at.
Stay there for the intended purpose.
Yeah, and they can do all the masonry repairs you want at 39,000.
But not fix the
But
roof.
nothing else. If this article does not remove that money from its stated purpose from a previous article. Right?
Maybe Felicia, over the last couple of years, how many times has the roof been patched at the Woodsdale? Each year?
A lot.
Every year it is the
Small, I mean, every year, small, there's a leak during a rainstorm, roofing company comes out, they patch a hole. And one of the things that we would like to do is do some more, without replacing the roof, because that's a lot more than $39,000, but to do some more repair work without it being leaking.
More substantive repairs.
Yes, there's dry rot around the edges.
We lost the Paul K. Smith room for a month last year at the
Yeah.
high school.
We're in the middle of
Oh, I'm
talking,
fine.
no, we have a motion on the floor.
Sorry, I apologize.
Sorry.
No, I just had a question along those lines. I don't know if I can ask
Oh,
that now.
yeah,
Why not
sure
just
you
name it
can.
roof repairs?
Good.
Yeah.
It just, this provides the flexibility. That's all.
Would
So,
exterior repair be a more,
Originally, yeah, we had talked about having building
line
envelope,
with-
but what did that mean? Exterior repairs, because then it could be masonry if we're really trying to save
if
buildings.
it's more in line with what was originally voted and what you guys were
Exterior
financially
would be-
responsible with?
all right, so, further discussion? So we're voting on the article as it's stated right now. Now, point of question for you, Sean. If for some reason someone wants to change this article on the floor to change the name or whatever, would that be something that one could do?
Yeah, it's with the scope, as long as it stays a school article, it's a repair article, then likely it would be within the scope, but if they suddenly want to say it's for highway department repairs, it can't do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve Article 9 as written. All those in favor of recommending approval of Article 9? All those against? Okay, anyone abstaining? Okay, I think that passes. Okay, all right, good, thank you. So that's, based upon the majority of that, we're going to be recommending approval of that, though it was not unanimous. That's okay. So we're going to recommend approval of that, too. All right, I think that, is that the end of the school ones, Till?
Did you want to talk at all, or have any questions about the technology planning article?
The part of the capital
You
plan.
wanna wait?
gonna suggest that.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
Which article is that, Peter?
Part of the capital plan.
Oh, part of the capital plan, okay, which,
Page 2.
Article 3 is the capital plan, I think, hold on. Article 3 is the capital plan. Yeah, Rick, you might want to come up and to what we're, because we have you guys here. On page 2 of the document that we're looking at. Okay, thank you. Oh, that's already mine. On page 2 of the special town meeting warrant is where the capital plan fiscal year 2014 priorities are listed out there. Because we have the school representation here, the third one down, which is school department total, there's a amount requested, which we talked about last time, is basically you're putting kind of things out there to keep them on the radar, et cetera. But under the town manager's recommendations, the technology plan, which was suggested to be $200,000, the town manager is recommending expending $150,000 on that. That's what we're talking about, that we're at, so, go ahead.
If I could just take 30 seconds and explain that recommendation. And I know we spoke to it a bit at your last meeting. Part of what I was trying to accomplish was to, within the available funds, which is certainly after we deal with the set aside for stabilization, was to fund as much of the plan as possible, keeping in mind that over the next year, we will be developing a 5-year plan, or reinstating, compilation of 5-year planning for capital, and trying to ensure that the school department got a reasonable piece of that, and this is what the school administration pointed out as their number one goal here. The $200,000 was really the upper limit that the superintendent and I discussed some time ago. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, is that a number less than that is not objectionable. It's just that how much can we accommodate within the available funds, and what you believe you can accomplish for $150,000. Obviously, I'll let you speak to that. So the number, the recommendation, I don't want anybody to take as a lesser, some sort of negative. It's really a matter of what do we think we can accomplish within available funds.
Thank you for that.
So,
Go right ahead.
in terms of the technology piece, and if I could, at some point, I want to go back just a little bit to the Woodsdale roof piece for a second, but
We can go either way.
not that we haven't talked about that enough tonight. But what I gave you was a handout that describes PARC, which is Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. We're going to be required by the state to implement this test using computers for all of the students in Abington, down to the elementary levels, in the early elementary levels. And so what you have, and you can please, peruse this at your leisure. However, if you flip to the page that says Next Steps, you can see just above that there's a grid actually. At the Beaverbrook Elementary School, we've got third graders who are going to be using a paper version of this year in a trial. So I don't make this stuff up just to make everybody go crazy in Abington. These are the things that the state makes us do. This is a good thing, because what it's going to provide is technology for students, and that's what we want our students in Massachusetts to have and use. So I don't want to be too glib about it, but you can see here in grade 5, they're taking an online test. At the Woodsdale, these are just the trials. Grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. We're already talking about busing students around the district to accommodate a shorter testing window because we don't have the capacity to do these small trials this year. So our school buildings already don't have the capacity for FY15. And we're talking hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to accommodate this requirement for testing. So, at this town meeting, if we've got the availability of $150,000 to buy new computers that will replace the 7 or 8-year-old computers that don't have the capacity because they don't move at the speed needed for this testing, we won't end up with more computers. We'll end up with more newer computers because we'll replace the old computers with the $150,000. It would provide 90 computers, and that would include the hardware, the software, and the infrastructure required, because this is also about electricity. It's also about the wireless and the networking for the internet, which is required. And once you get into that, in our older buildings, you get into retrofitting old construction, which is encapsulated in the wall. You have the asbestos and the hazardous materials that have to be appropriately dealt with and handled so that we keep our kids safe. And so it's just another reason we're talking about new school construction and renovation, because just briefly on that, the state will pay for 55 to 57, 58% of all of these dollars for us if we build in Abington. And this sort of technology comes with it. So if one day that happens in Abington with this study that we're doing, trying to get maximum state funding, all of these computers could be moved and used again someplace else. So these dollars won't be wasted in any way. Now, even if it weren't PARC required, even if we weren't trying to get ready for the FY15 implementation of this technology that's required in all Massachusetts schools, providing computers to children to learn is not a bad thing. And we have not put money in this for, we haven't put substantial money in this we put money into it every year to maintain what we can for years. So.
Sean, go ahead.
This is a silly question regarding the Common Core and regarding, was it 14 states that are in, 19?
I think it's 16 now. It was 23. Some have dropped out.
Are there any chances that DOE are going to make either some modifications, adaptations, or something different or other than Common Core? So the acrimony I've heard is that it's actually a lower standard.
I'm guessing, and this is just my opinion, Massachusetts will not shy off of Common Core. I'm guessing Massachusetts will not shy off of this park testing because our Commissioner of Education has put Massachusetts in the lead role in the nation in this effort. And some of the requirements of the technology may shift, hopefully in the year to come. They'll back off on, or maybe they'll slow the implementation, or maybe they'll back off on the technology requirements. But the answer to your question is my opinion.
Sure.
He's also the chairman of the board for Park. Mitchell Chester's
Yeah,
also
right. He's the, right, our state commissioner is the chair of the board for this park project.
So he's probably gonna support it.
Right, that's what I base my opinion on.
Yes.
Well, but that's,
Go ahead.
well, clearly, the Commissioner of Education is subject to whoever is sitting in the corner office with the next term as well, right? And we're coming to the end of one year for a term. I only bring it up because it's a pretty big nut. We
Yeah.
talked about this last year, actually, in
I remember we
preparation for this.
It's huge.
It's a fairly aggressive standard. I think the technology in and of itself needs to be upgraded. But that notwithstanding, it's an amazing amount of computers. I don't know, Mr. Schaefer can refresh my memory on the ratio of students to computers?
That is expected for this?
Yes.
2 to 1. 2 students per 1 computer. What they anticipate, we would need to set up our computer testing areas where students would be able to sit a certain distance from each other and take this online test all at the same time for testing security purposes. And the question a lot of people would ask who've ever taken an online test is, well, why can't this person be on question 5 and this question be on question 10 and just scramble the questions up so you can have people testing next to each other? And the answer to that question is because some of the reading and literature things build on each other as they take the test. So they have to take it in a sequential order.
Just a quick question, reading through it, I know we need technology in the school, but under next steps.
Yep.
There's a thing here that says, so you had to fill out some kind of a confirmation form by September 18th.
Right.
Which I'm assuming you did.
Yep.
And it verified participation and technological readiness of the school of testing online. So do we have to fill out then that we are not ready and put in that we did not meet the technical specifications?
We did, we have, and then we try to accommodate it because to not be ready for it and that it happens in FY15 and not participate in getting ourselves acclimated to this would be putting our students at a disadvantage. So although I don't feel, and there are other systems that are in the same situation we are. I don't want you to feel like we're an island here in Abington. We're the only ones wrestling with this. Other systems across the Commonwealth are also wrestling with this. But not doing the field, not participating in the field test, not being ready for this in FY15 would put our students, and just closing the door and just would put us at a disadvantage if we need to do this for our students, even if it means busing kids around the district.
And I also, my understanding is that following the verification of technical capacities in districts, that the DESE was shocked at the results in the number of districts that didn't fulfill the technical requirements. And my understanding is they're actually, for the field test, decreasing for the field test portion, decreasing the requirements for what you have to have. It still has to be done online. It still has to, they're very specific about how students need to sit and how they need, but that wasn't necessarily a way to.
I have lots of problems with this on lots of levels, none of which, what I think about that, matter to the state. We're also going to be administering MCAS tests during this year to these same students who are going to be exhausted from testing, and it's time out of learning. We are really the #1 state in the nation in terms of academic achievement. And if you compare Massachusetts to other industrialized nations, we're in the top 5, 6 if you compare us to nations. I mean, that's not to say we don't need to improve in education. I guess my point is, if things aren't that broken, why are we doing this? So I got lots of problems with it, and that won't matter. This is what we're required to do. But again, computers for students' learning needs isn't a waste of money anyway.
Because they wouldn't just be used for this test.
No.
Correct.
Then they'll
These
be
computers
meant
are
to
used
be,
every day. They're
continue to be used.
They're used in the summer, they're used, in labs, they're used in the school year, they're used in the afternoons. I mean, they're used, the investment is maximized.
Yes, go ahead.
So MCAS isn't going away, and this is gonna be another,
This will replace it.
okay.
For this year, we'll
So
do
this is
both.
just the test
Field
to
test,
see if it works,
to
see if
kick the
it's too hard.
tires. Yep.
To get questions, to see how questions work.
Yep. And I think, Sean, earlier asking how many states are involved in this, it was 23, it's now down to 16, because some states have dropped off. And so now, Massachusetts, our testing requirement has actually increased, because we're picking up the slack for other states that have dropped off in terms of the number of students that field test this.
Yeah.
How many districts are participating in the test in the state?
I'm gonna say 90, I'm just gonna guess or assume, 90+%. Very few are, just opting out. So some I'm sure have, but.
Okay. Any questions with regard to the 150,000 that's potentially being recommended for the technology plan for the school department as part of the capital plan? Yes?
How many computers is that by?
Sorry?
How many computers?
90,
90
right?
computers.
Right.
Plus the additional the infrastructure, the electrical, the network.
The hardware, the software.
And here's a goofy backside question. Do you have the space to put them?
Well, it's actually replacing
Right.
old computers for the most part. One of the interesting pieces of all of this is furniture for computers, that the furniture that things are on are like original to when Abington first bought computers, and furniture's a huge expense around technology, which we try not to spend on furniture so we can spend it on technology.
For example, when Rockland built and renovated schools, we snapped up their desks for how many dollars per desk?
It was under $20.
Per desk. So.
And they go for
you-
$100.
You scrape the gum off the desks from Rockland and you buy them for $20 a piece, and that's what we're using.
They were less than that.
And
Like
on that note-
$100 plus desks that I think probably were original to the Folio. The desks that we
They just
replaced.
made their way around.
No, the ones that we replaced
Oh,
were
they were
original
the
to the
original ones
Folio.
that-
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good, anything else? Okay, we're not gonna make a recommendation on this, I don't think, because we have to take the whole article as a whole, but, thank you very much.
The wood seal roof piece was just a
Oh, yes.
placeholder because we obviously have a concern about that. We have
That's what's
building
all.
infrastructure needs. That's all I want to say. And I did bring the cards that we use to access the Abington School Building Committee website for more information if you're interested
Oh, sure.
in it. I can give.
Oh, great, thank you.
notes so you
Sure.
can reference it. It's exciting. We'll talk to you, I know, at a future
Yep.
meeting about school building and construction.
All righty. All right, thank you. You have one?
I have several.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Creating a foundation
Thank
for
you.
learning. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for
Thank
coming in. Okay, it's about 8:45. I will throw it out to you guys. Are we okay to just keep moving?
Yeah.
Yes? Yes, okay. We're good to go then. All right, so what we're going to spend, I think that most of the rest of our time here is to go back probably to the beginning of the special town meeting warrant with the town manager and move forward and get recommendations on the other articles as well. That's the goal. All right, so just to reiterate, it's the special town meeting warrant. Article 1, so Rick, you ready to go?
Sure.
Okay, see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $628,249 from free cash to the stabilization fund or take any other action relative thereto. in order to think about that, we probably want to talk about finances in total.
Yes,
Because
and,
Article 1 is to put money into stabilization. Before we can say we
Correct.
will do that, we would want to know where that's coming
Right.
from and that we have
Right.
that.
now, 2 points I would make. First of all, from the draft warrant a few weeks ago, that number's gone down a little, because what this represents is 60% of certified free cash. Yes, and initially, we had estimated that free cash, certified free cash could be as high as about 1.1 million. The final number is $1,447,000 and change. So, so this is exactly 60% minus 20 cents, because the town accountant compelled me to not make her book work any more difficult than necessary. So, that being the case, that is just about 60% of, we know who's running the shop around here, don't we? So, so that is the keystone, as you can see down on the first page of my handout to you. Free cash available, I'm sorry, projected should actually be, I did not update that, that's an actual free cash number. So that's the starting point for
Does all
this.
have this, by the way? Everyone has a copy of this? Okay, thanks.
So that's what, from our certified free cash, the 628, which replaces the funds that were utilized last year. I believe it was for about 536,000 that was used for the budgetary purposes, and then some. So that was the primary goal of our free cash for this year. So if you were to then, in theory at least, to go through some of these other articles, Article 2 is, we're not going to propose that any of that be taken from free cash, and I can explain that when we get to it. Article 3, if you subtract the borrowing, the lease purchase borrowing for the ambulance, that would amount to $381,000 from free cash. And again, that would continue to deduct from the total, which would leave us with about $38,000 for other articles. One of them you've already discussed and dealt with, that being the Griffin's Dairy situation.
2,500 there, yeah.
Correct. So, and in the line, other articles that contemplates that possibility, as well as the possibility of the $10,000 for the grant consulting services to resubmit the housing rehab grant for this year. So, at least if you were to approve the capital article as it's being proposed, this would be the result, and this would be the balance at the end, $25,000 to be used for other things, which I am going to recommend that be transferred into the reserve fund. But that's for a later point, so. Are there any questions about that? Is the only substantive change is the actual free cash number, which was, a stabilization transfer number, which was a little bit higher, based upon 60% of a possible 1.1 million in free cash certification. So other than that, everything else is,
As we had discussed.
yes.
Okay, we can, do you guys have any questions about that? Do you want to make a recommendation on Article 1 right now, or do you want to go through some of these other things
I'm
and
good
come
with
back to that? What would you,
I'm good with, I'd like to recommend approval of Article 1.
Second.
okay, discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of recommending approval of Article 1? Yep, okay, good. Recommend approval of that.
I recommend approval of Article 2.
Okay, is there a second, and then we can discuss it too?
Second.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to recommend Article 2 for approval. Maybe, now this is some outstanding bills, I would
Correct,
imagine.
correct. In the draft motion, and again, this is drafts that'll be sent to town council, and I'll coordinate these with Maureen at the, next week or so.
The actual motions.
Would be to transfer, the first two are particular to the Strawberry Valley Golf Course, so those would come out of the enterprise fund. And the last bill would be recommended to be paid out of the existing budget for the current fiscal year. Obviously, as you know, we still need approval to do that, 99/10 vote of town meeting to do that. So there wouldn't be any need for any outside funding sources for to meet the requirements of this article.
See, transfer from available funds, unpaid bills from previous fiscal year. Okay, so the Eastern Cedar and the Patricia LeBrecq would be, the funding source is from Strawberry Valley, is that correct?
Correct, Golf Course Enterprise Fund, right.
And the insurance, is that what that is?
Yes, that's a,
Increased in,
there was an increase, a policy change that caused an increase in the budget for last fiscal year. That was an outstanding balance. That was not either, I don't know if it wasn't billed in time or if it just got lost in the shuffle. So it needs to be paid, but it's not something that's going to have any major impact on the current year's budget, municipal insurance budget. So we just propose to pay it out of the existing year's budget,
okay.
once it's approved for payment.
Okay, would anyone want to offer a recommendation on Article 2?
Rick just did.
Oh, okay, right, and so when we're discussing, okay, sorry, I missed that. Okay, any other questions with regard to Article 2? Okay, all those in favor of recommending approval of Article 2? Okay, thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, so there we are on that. Okay, takes us to Article 3. See if the town will vote to transfer from available funds or borrow the total sum of $683,500 for the purchase and equipping or leasing and equipping with an option to purchase for periods of time up to or in excess of 3 years, the following new and/or replacement capital items for various town departments and for the capital projects described below, including payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, all as recommended by the town manager, or take any other action relative thereto. And on page 2, that's what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the school department being here. So we are on the, this is the capital plan. Okay, we can take it line by line, if you will. Looks like there is a replacement for two police cruisers. Go ahead, Rick, if you want to take us.
Yeah, my understanding is, and I'm sorry, I forget who the liaison is to the police department, but my understanding is that part of the cruiser replacement package has been essentially a 3-2-3-2 over a period of time. This would be a 2-year, and these would be 2 marked cruisers that would be being replaced. So
Yep.
I don't want, if
Yeah, I
anything
talked to him
else.
today, and yeah, that's
Excellent.
the same thing. 2 marked cruisers, that, so it wouldn't be additional cruisers, he'd be replacing cruisers that...
Existing cruisers.
Existing cruisers that need to be replaced.
These would be the SUVs.
He's asking whether these are SUVs or not.
I think they are. I think they're gonna be the Ford Explorers. I looked at the same manufacturer, MHQ. I went to MHQ, and that's, for the most part, that's all that
Yeah,
they do.
the Crown Vic is no longer,
Right, and I think that the majority of police departments on the, they look at
Are using
going
that.
Which is-
what he asked for. And
Last,
that's what
yeah.
commentary, so.
which is a shame. I think the Crown Victoria was such a good police vehicle, heavy-duty police vehicle. I
The
don't,
gas hog.
well,
Like an SUV is.
but they were
These here is bad.
durable,
Yeah,
though,
they're-
very
they're
durable
600
cars, though.
actually,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
high output, but
Time will tell on
Yeah.
on these in the Charger, you know, which I know
Really
it's not
need it.
particular to Abington, but I
The
know
town
it's.
should be using tanks, because that's...
Yeah. I hear those are pretty good on gas, too.
Switch them all to diesel.
Okay.
Okay, so there's that.
Want me to just
Go ahead.
progress through them for now?
Yeah, sure.
And then we can, I don't know.
Yes, certainly.
As you know.
So people, we have talked about many of these before.
Right,
so
right, so
it's
some
not
of
like
this I
we're
know
buzzing through
as a
without-
recap of, right. I know the fire chief was here at the last time you met, replacing the ambulance, the 2002 ambulance, $225,000, and that would be in the form of a lease purchase, which is encompassed in the article description as a possible funding source, as a borrowing. And that would be a heavy-duty ambulance, and I think he's described that. And again, I don't know what liaison may have spoken to him on that, but I don't know if he had any further questions that
So we wouldn't be buying this outright, this would be a...
this would be at least purchased from the ambulance receipts revolving account.
Go ahead, Sean.
just a point of order, I had volunteered to be one of the liaisons to the fire department. I had an in-depth discussion with him as it relates to this particular purpose. Again, we have professional differences of opinion, But also in this particular purchase is also certain life-saving equipment, like the Lucas device. The Lucas device is for compressions during CPR. It's a machine that actually does continuous cardiac compressions. So that's a component of that particular $225 price, as well as other accoutrements associated with general rescue and medicine. So the price of the ambulance isn't $225.
It's everything else associated with that.
Yeah, it's equipment, purchasing equipment.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, inquiries about that? Okay. And then I think we talked about the technology, just moving along, we talked about the technology plan
Yes.
just moments ago.
Right. Highway Department, the sidewalk drainage maintenance, my understanding is that historically, there's been money put aside for this, and I think this is actually, in some ways, goes back to part of the concern that Mr. Tyler voiced earlier in terms of budgeting through, through articles. I'm not sure that that over the course of time, this is really the type of thing that shouldn't be a budget item of some sort. But my understanding is that historically, the town has put money aside from time to time for sidewalk and drainage maintenance. I will say that, I don't know, I try not to say anything inappropriate, but it's public knowledge getting around that the DPW superintendent has just accepted the same job over in Weymouth, so I don't know if that's going to impact in any ways, the expenditure of some of these funds, but right now, there aren't any funds put aside for this purpose specifically.
Can you repeat that again?
Which part?
Who accepted the position?
Yeah, Kenan, he's accepted
That's
the
what I thought you
DPW position,
In
director
Weymouth.
position in Weymouth, yes,
Really?
yes.
Oh, geez, I'm sad.
Yeah, it's,
That's why I needed to hear it twice.
yeah, right, and he's submitted his letter, I've informed the Board of Selectmen, so I, obviously, no offense, but I wouldn't tell you that before I told the Board of
Cer-
Selectmen that
oh, obviously,
information.
yeah.
No.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, good luck to him, but I'm sad.
Right, to the extent, though, that he has submitted this request, he won't be here to expend those funds personally. It's a little bit of a I want to say, somewhat of a dilemma. On the other hand, as I say, there are no funds put aside for this purpose right now, as I've been told, and you've done historically.
Question, anyone have a question about that?
Is that something that in the future we will look to have be a budgetary item?
I think it's probably a good idea. There are things that that ought to be in a capital plan, and there are things that really ought to be ongoing maintenance. So
Consider that.
yeah, I would agree with that. It may not be 50,000, but it might be, it might be some piece that's part of the operational budget.
Maybe we'll take that up after January.
Moving ahead, again, a little bit of a recap, the demolition of, and removal of the house and barn at Griffin's Dairy. That is, the quotes informal quotes, again, this will have to be procured, appropriately, but you don't do that until you have some idea as to what you might be looking at. But the informal numbers we've had were approximately $70,000, but that did not include, to the best of my knowledge, the requirements for prevailing wages and any other remediation. I've been told there's probably some asbestos remediation that'll be necessary. So there is a buffer between what the informal quotes, because the last thing we need is to find out, we're a little
Something
short.
more than what
And I'm always get concerned about, you try to go through a procurement process, get competitive bids, but anybody worth their salt can look at a town meeting vote and see how much is available for.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the beast. There's nothing we can do about the law, so.
Understood. Any questions on that, you guys? Yeah, go ahead. Matt?
Similar to the earlier conversation about Griffin's Dairy, if we don't have any current plans and don't know what we're doing, is there an immediate need to do the demolition?
The concern is the the public safety nature of it right now, with the concern about kids getting in there, you know, emergency response requirements that could jeopardize, you know, public safety officials, as, you know, as well as, you know, again, anybody that might be in the facilities. That's really the biggest concern at this point, not so much the potential for future, you know, the reuse of the property. It's really more specific to the safety issues involved.
Have there been issues in the past or the recent past?
There was a fire, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe it's more, but
Yeah, I believe
the buildings are condemned.
the committee has recommended that the buildings be removed, and I know that there are, the Board of Selectmen haven't taken a vote, but there have been individual members that have expressed their concerns about that, having spoken to our public safety officials over time, too. So I think there's relatively broad-based support that it's time, so.
Good, thank you. Replace senior van.
Yes, as you know from a prior conversation, that the total that is requested, it would be the town's percentage, total amount on the grant that's been received by the State Department of Transportation to replace their existing van. However, they do have some funds set aside in their gift account, which is generated and does regenerate from contributions that we can't really call them fares in a traditional sense, because they're not required. You can't require a fare for use of the vehicle, but there are some funds set aside, and so this would be proposing to use about approximately $2,500 of their $3,000 and change to be put towards that $10,000. That's why the recommendation is a little less than the requested. So, and that has been shared with the department head, and there is agreement that that is acceptable.
Any questions about that, you guys? No? Okay, good, thank you, good use of.
The sewer truck is, and again, the waterworks treatment vehicles, these are, would be paid for out of their respective enterprise funds, routine replacement of vehicles. The water department truck is, would be something that the town, Abington would be paying a portion of, because it's, in Rockland, we'll be paying a portion of also, so. I don't know if anybody, the liaison has, would have anything to add to those.
I don't think so. You guys have any questions about that? I would imagine we've already checked to make sure that those funds are in existence.
Yes, yes.
Enterprise fund? Okay, good.
Like I say, I don't want to, or we've kind of been over a lot of this before. I don't want to take your time.
So that's all that. No questions about? So based upon your recommendation, that brings us to the 683, which is the total recommended. It breaks it out a little,
Right.
it breaks it out well, based upon ambulance accounts and water and sewer enterprise accounts, where the funds would be coming from. Okay. Guys, so do you have any questions on Article 3, the capital plan? Entertain a recommendation?
Motion to approve,
Motion to-
Article 3, capital plan.
Town manager's recommendation.
Town manager's recommendation, exactly, Rick.
Okay.
You
And you
seconding that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so basically we're, the motion on the floor is to recommend approval of Article 4 as written with the town manager's recommendations for expenditure.
Article 3.
What's that?
Article 3.
Article 3, I'm sorry. Article 3, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, all those against? All those abstain? Chad's abstain. Okay, that passes, so there's our recommendations.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah?
Rick, when do these warrants get published, or are they?
This will be posted, has to be posted by the 21st.
It's Monday.
So you can fill in the finance committee's column to match what you guys, so, great, the printed version will show, great.
If that's what
Our
people
goal is to have
historically
this
do.
to you guys, our recommendations by Friday, and I would say that we are comfortable with filling in our recommendations.
On the warrant that we put, that would be great if,
Yes? Yep.
But also Article 3, when it's the table of Article 3 would be filled in under our column.
Correct, correct.
In addition to our recommendations. Cindy?
Mhm.
I just have- And I know we just voted on it, but can I open it? Can we reopen that just for 1 minute? Article 3?
I think you need to motion
Can I
to
motion to
reopen.
Discussion on Article 3.
And some-
Second.
Second?
Reconsider?
Okay, reconsider. Article,
Only
okay.
because it went through my
Oh,
head.
do we have to vote to agree to reconsider, right? Anyone, okay, the motion on the floor is to reconsider Article 3.
I respect It's just silly, this is for me as parliamentarian as a chair. Unless you believe there's going to be a substantive change, you can have a discussion. You can entertain a discussion without having any vote. So we already voted on it, and if she wants to, you can allow her to discuss it, and if it compels us to have.
Do you want to discuss it, or would you like to open it? You can or reconsider? If you want to reconsider, we can.
Reconsider.
Okay, so we have a reconsider, and then we have a second still?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all those looking to reconsider it? Okay, those not wanting to reconsider, those abstain? Okay. We're reconsidering Article 3.
Only because my hand went up, and I will admit, before I thought it all the way through, that $50,000 in the highway.
Mhm.
We're on a proponent of not using capital funds during the year and not holding it on a contingency plan if our highway superintendent is not gonna be there. And it's gonna sit there and I'm just, is there a better use of it at this point?
So will it
It's just
sit there, or
something to
will there
think
be
out there.
work
Will
done?
there, or will it not be? Or will it just kinda sit there like the $39,000 that the school has and the $75,000 Garaventa money?
So the question is, will that 50,000, if appropriated, be used even though the highway superintendent is not there? Will there, yeah, go ahead.
He has an assistant superintendent that runs the operation when he's not around, so I'm pretty confident that'll be spent.
And
Can I add just, because I know Rick has been, historically, before, probably more than 5 years ago, we used to always have a separate sidewalk budget that was cut when we had all the big cuts. And I know it's one thing, I think Kenny's been asking to be put back in. Not to say that your point is not valid or invalid, I just want to say historically, it used to be there. He was trying to get back to what we used to do. But
Yeah,
you-
and I have no problem with that, I just wanna make sure, cause I'm just like, I don't
Yeah.
want it just sitting in this pot
Sure.
hanging over here when we can be using it
For
if
else.
we needed to for other things, cause we have, like I said, that $100-something thousand that's,
And then-
Hang on.
Good
and
point.
then re-voting on
and then
it 3 years
revoting
from
on it,
now.
yeah.
Right, and I think, I don't want to speak for Kenny because he's not here, but I think the purpose of this was that it's targeted only for sidewalk and drainage, instead of going into highway where it could be used for a lot
Fields
of
and
different
something.
things.
Right, and one of the reasons why I raised the point that he's accepted another position is because the number came from him. Not so much that, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that it wouldn't be expended per se, but I, in terms of the accountability for where the number came from, it came from Kennan, and I didn't think it would be fair to you to not let you know that the gentleman that made the request isn't,
It's not.
isn't gonna be here. That's all, so.
Okay, so, any other questions? Did you want to change anything? Did you want to make a new motion?
I just needed to clarify.
Okay,
So do we rescind?
we can rescind that reconsideration, I think we can we? I think that's what we do, right?
No.
Vote.
Okay, so we,
Sorry.
all right, so do we take another motion to approve Article 3?
Right. town
Motion
manager.
to approve Article 3.
Second.
With
The
that
town
caveat?
managers.
Okay. With the, as we had to, all those in favor? Okay, great, we're good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One abstention, I'm
One
sorry, I'm
abstention.
still abstaining, thank you. Okay, so that, all right, so we're good there, thank you, good discussion. All right, Article 4, we haven't touched on yet. Article 4 is to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds to supplement specific budget line items appropriated under Article 1 of the 2013 annual town meeting or otherwise amend said vote, all as recommended by the town manager as listed on the document entitled FY 2014 recommended line item transfers or take any other action relative thereto. Article 4.
And in fairness, I will tell you that it's a little premature for you to vote this, only because if you look at the paperwork I've given you, and the moderator has pointed out that the title of the document here is slightly different than what's listed on the warrant, so that's an adjustment. These are all the types of issues that need to be funded within existing budgets. You know, these aren't free cash type of, and the town accountant is seeking appropriate places to recommend that these be funded from, or that we don't fund it. So I don't know if you have another meeting, or if this is something that you would I don't know what your history is, but it's not really appropriate, in my opinion, because I can't recommend that we have a suitable funding sources for these at this time. Obviously, the one thing I will point out is the reserve fund amount, the $25,332,000 that's remaining after the capital plan, and after at least, you know, some accommodation for the mowing of Griffin's Dairy and the grant consulting services for the housing rehab program. That's what's remaining is, I'm going to recommend that it be transferred into the reserve fund. We had a discussion last meeting about whether that should go to the veterans benefits, and I know we are gonna need some help there, but eventually, I've been instructed as recently as this week that there's been 4 of the cases between, unfortunately, some deaths and some people moving out of town. The caseload is starting to wane a little bit. So even though I know it's inevitable that there will be some need for additional funds in the benefits line item, it's just impossible to know how much that might be or when those funds would be. So I feel, I can speak for the town accountant also, who also believes it makes more sense to put that in your reserve fund in the event that the veterans agent needs to come in and demonstrate the need for funds. I'm sorry, I know it's more work eventually if it's necessary, but it makes more sense than putting money in on a contingency into a veterans benefit line item.
I guess it's just important to make the point that it could be the veterans agent that comes in, once it goes into the reserve fund. It could be the veterans agent that comes in, it could be the library, park and rec, like whatever department ends up with some kind of an emergency.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know, obviously I haven't given you enough for you to make a recommendation on, and I don't know how you want to handle this going forward.
Well, for right now, I would agree with you. If we don't know where the current budget appropriation would be coming from to make these changes, I would say we cannot recommend approval of this. We wouldn't want to recommend passing over it, which means that we wouldn't recommend to take no action on it. Our recommendation could say that we do not have a recommendation at this time, but we are in anticipation of additional information provided by the town manager, something along those lines. So we do have to post a recommendation, but the recommendation would basically be that we don't have a recommendation on this yet, but would anticipate having a recommendation prior to town meeting. And I think we're meeting, I think, on the 30th. We have to have these posted by Monday, the 21st. But we're scheduled to meet on the 30th, and then, of course, we meet the night before, the night of special town meeting. We meet before then and can change that recommendation.
And we can certainly include on the printed warrant the language you've outlined, and I'm sure you'll be happy to email that to me.
Yeah, something along those lines. So I will put that together. But that would be my suggestion, is that we motion to, almost like to delay having a recommendation.
I'll motion to,
whatever I just said.
I motion to.
Not provide a recommendation, or
I-
our recommendation.
I motion to.
Sean, would you like
provide
to
a
wordsmith
recommendation-
that?
To provide a recommendation after receiving more information at a future date.
I think you can just state that you're taking no action on this article at the time. I don't think you need a vote or a vote to not recommend, just take no action at this time.
Until further
Would that-
information. Take no action until further information.
No action due to,
The need of further information, or however you want to word that.
In anticipation of additional information.
Right, and in fairness to everybody, this is more kind of a house cleaning article as opposed to anything really truly substantive, but.
All right, I'll put that together, but that's the.
Thank you.
The theory of it is that we're basically, we're not gonna make a recommendation, or our recommendation is we're not gonna make a recommendation, but that's what I'm going to put on our recommendations, is that we don't have a recommendation at this time in anticipation of additional.
I think your recommendation is gonna be whatever Deb says your recommendation was when this.
But I have to type it up between now and Friday. All right, so then so that was for Article 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 we've already done. Article 10 is the zoning bylaw, which was brought forward by the planning board.
Right.
Do you want to tell us about that?
In your handouts, very appropriately labeled in the top corner, number 10, is an Article 10. There's an email from Ms. Shea, who is the planning board's administrator, and her commentary that she has shared with and been approved by the chairman of her board regarding the purpose of this article. As you are, I'm sure, already well aware, it's the extension of the moratorium on the zoning of marijuana facilities. They're looking to essentially continue the moratorium until June 30th of 2014, until such time by that point, they would be able to bring, at some point before then, they would bring forward an article to properly zone the facilities as required by state law. So that's all they're looking to do, is to continue the moratorium.
And that's, if the town approves that that's legal and all that?
Yes.
It's within the,
Yes, it is becoming rather understood that the Attorney General is likely not going to approve moratoriums out beyond the date that you see here, 6/30/14. All that's not cast in stone, it's just what we've been essentially advised through our various relationships, that there is going to be, we'll say, the moratorium on moratoriums is going to be coming to an end. So there is pressure to have a legitimate bylaw in place, which the planning board is working on, so.
yep.
What happens if town meeting isn't until after that date?
If town meeting is what?
It's not until after
After June 30th?
There's no restrictions on that.
Exactly, yes,
The moratorium ends.
right,
And there's no zoning
Right.
restrictions for
right.
Correct.
marijuana dispensary.
That would not be good.
almost the town
Well,
meeting
beyond
is-
that, if we don't have a town meeting by June 30th, we also won't have a budget for the fiscal year.
When,
Yes.
if the zoning changes were, say it was June 28th, Ren, do they go into effect
Immediately.
the day, immediately when they're voted?
Yes, zoning changes, although it takes time for them to be approved by the Attorney General, they are retroactive to the date they were adopted.
Somebody could open and then close.
You have plans?
I don't-
In theory, but yeah, they would, in theory, but not in practicality, that's not going to happen.
Motion to
Other
approve?
questions? Any other questions, any other issues?
You know something we don't know? I'm just,
I don't know anything. As Article 10,
There's one going into Southfield.
300,000 square foot one.
That's the commercial property going in on Southfield.
Some towns are looking for it, they want them.
Okay, so entertain a motion on Article 10?
Motion to approve Article 10.
Discussion? All those in favor of recommending approval of Article 10? Okay, that's everybody, okay. Recommend approval of that. Okay, that's 10. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $10,000 for payment to the Community Opportunities Group Incorporated or other qualified entity in accordance with the requirements of General Law C 30B to prepare and resubmit an application for a community development block grant for the town of Abington or take any other action relative thereto. Article 11, using $10,000 of free cash.
that's exactly what it is, yes, right.
We received the grant last year.
Right. You're eligible every 2 years to reapply for this particular grant, the housing rehab piece of this grant through DHCD. And I have in the packet, which I know you haven't had time to read, so I do apologize for that. There are a couple documents which provide some insight as to the status of the program. I will read a little piece, though. This is a joint program between Whitman and Abington, and primarily because without a regional application and the points that you get for a regional application, you're just simply not going to be competitive. That's just the way the program works. Approximately $540,000 of the grant was budgeted for housing rehabilitation. And currently, and as from my email, $270,000 was targeted for each town. Most of that, my understanding that when all is said and done, there will be a larger proportion spent in Abington than Whitman, just because of the nature of the projects. There's also $54,000 in addition to that is being helping to subsidize the Abington Food Pantry. So I don't know how familiar anybody is with this particular program, but it's an income-eligible program, a housing rehabilitation program, that people are eligible to apply and receive loans and grants for dealing with primarily, safety and other type of issues in their homes. So it's generally, obviously, it's good for the individuals. It's usually very helpful for the area in which those individuals live. It's an excellent program, and it would be great to be able to renew this. I know people I've spoken to over the many years, and I've seen these programs work, may have some philosophical issues about whether or not this is something government should even be getting involved in, but the reality is the state government's involved in it, and somebody's going to get these funds, and if we could keep them coming our way, that would be helpful.
Is the building rate for a grant
It is, yes. Now, the caveat I pointed out last time, Sean, is that we're not sure to what extent we can get some contribution from the town of Whitman to help subsidize this. But, so it's possible that 10,000 will be less, and the worst-case scenario is it would become free cash at some point or reappropriated, so.
I'm not wanting to open a can of worms, but when we had some, I guess personnel changes in a sense, didn't we have somebody in the town that was gonna kind of shift some responsibilities in their job description and become the grant writer?
Yes, I believe that was the case.
So,
Was that a grant writer for this or for everything?
You're obviously speaking in a little bit of code. I will say that these particular grants, and again, only because I've been involved with these for many years, there's a number of grant writers, a small handful of grant writers or firms around the state that get these grants because they know exactly what it takes to apply for and manage these grants. The state likes to give grants to people who make their lives easier, and administer these programs in a way that makes their lives easier. So these are very competitive, and if you don't have specialists doing this, your chances are just not very good. That's the reality of it, so.
So is that a no? We don't have somebody in-house that can do it?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the question was.
well,
I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. The answer, yeah, we don't have the expertise in-house to put together an application that has a good chance of success. And I would consider me in that group of people who don't have the expertise, to put this together in a way that has the possibility of success. It really is a niche.
I can't say anything. I understand what you're saying in that, but it just reminds me, we just talked about it at the end of last year, and I think this person got a raise because they were gonna change their job description and be the grant writer for the town.
But I think some things changed with the setup of, I think maybe that might have become a union position, and so if you change a.
I'm not sure if that became union yet or not. So, I'm just saying.
Maybe we should keep that on the radar.
The cow moves the moon, and, the state is blue. I mean, I don't know what
I think we just want to like, I think that's something that we don't want to forget, that there was, that there was some discussion about us having an in-house grant writer. Maybe not for these particular grants, but overall, I think that's something we want to think about.
Would you like a
Appreciate
motion?
that. Yeah, go right ahead.
I used one of those grant specialists from Nice Chief, you were here, Rick, at the time.
And that would be Sharon Gay of
Yeah.
STG Consultants.
She got us
She's one of the very small handful, Rick.
Good funds
Yeah.
to the police department.
Yeah.
I got almost $3 million.
I also believe that she wrote the grant that got us the sewer extension
Yes.
up Route 18 to the terminals up there. That was a big project back then. But point is, some of these are very specialized, and it really is a niche type of activity.
Well, I know the school rights proposals for grants, I know Kenan has done it in the past too, so maybe
Yeah.
there is some opportunity for someone to consolidate if they have the skills. Maybe not so much for this one, but
Yeah.
consolidate that grant writing and put that to be someone's responsibilities. If that's the right thing, especially
Yeah.
if someone like Kenan is
Possible.
leaving and if he was in charge of doing it. No, I think it's possible even Council on Aging directors may have written their own too, but maybe not.
The second Chad's motion, he made a motion.
Thank you. A motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of approving Article 11? All those, I forget, no. Opposed, thank you. I knew it was a verbal word. And then those abstaining? Abstain from the vote. Okay, so that passes. Opposed, I can never think of that. Okay, it's true. Rewind some of the tapes,
you're
I can
so
never
agreeable.
remember it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, Article 12.
I'll make this simple in that there are no collective bargaining agreements yet finalized, and so I can't recommend to the selectmen, never mind the finance committee yet, any particular approvals. Is it possible that could change before town meeting? It is possible. I would say that it is unlikely, though.
We could motion to pass over it, which would be
Yeah.
taking no action.
Would you take no action?
Yeah, so.
I mean,
We should,
the fundamental problem, as you know, is that in order to fund collective bargaining agreements, you really, you need to be using existing recurring revenue.
Yes.
And that's a challenge right now in this fiscal year.
But can we do the same thing that we did with the previous article, that we would,
take no
recommend-
action on this
recommend to take no
in
action?
anticipation of additional information or something like that?
Right.
Are we good with that? Yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, we're not saying we don't think we should fund this, we're just saying that we can't at this point make any recommendation on that, because
We need more information.
if
And
that's
as long,
forthcoming.
and as long as you can email that
I will do that.
coherent
Don't worry
fashion,
about it. Yep.
I'm good with it.
We'll wordsmith that. All kinds of crazy. Okay, Article 13. See if the town will vote to rescind, oh, here we go, rescind unissued borrowing authority in the amount of $40,751 approved under Article 5 of the April 4th, 2011 special town meeting, where the Woodsdale School window replacement project has been completed, and these residual funds will not be needed or take any other action relative thereto. Rescind unissued borrowing authority. I think we all
Recommend
understand that.
approval.
A
I mean,
second.
yeah,
Our motion to recommend approval, second, discussion,
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did.
and
Bob,
second by
Chad
by
second.
Bottom line is, it's just an authorization to borrow. That project is done. There's no reason to keep that authorization out there to borrow. All those in favor? Okay, we're gonna recommend approval of that. And Article 14, to see if the town will vote to transfer unexpended funds encumbered in the fiscal year 2013 health insurance budget line item to the other post-employment benefits, OPEB trust fund, said funds not to exceed $109,000 or take any other action relative thereto.
Recommend approval of Article 14.
Second.
It's a question.
Discussion? Go right
It's a
ahead.
silly question. Why didn't that revert to free cash?
Because it's still on the books. What happened was there was an agreement with the employee groups to set aside certain amount of funds in order to, essentially mitigation funds when there was some changes in health insurance co-pays. And the reimbursement timeframe that was in the agreements lapsed into the current fiscal year, or was pushed forward into the current fiscal year. And the funds I guess they would say the upper limit, or what was put aside to fund that mitigation package, was encumbered into the existing fiscal year. So that's why they didn't expire, because they were encumbered to meet an obligation. That obligation is now expired per se, and no longer necessary, or the obligations have all been met, and there's still a balance remaining of the encumbered amount. So it was actually the idea of our treasurer collector to put that into our OPEB trust fund, which would make a lot of sense, so.
Is the balance in that 109,000?
It's 109,000 and change, and once again, being nice to our town accountant, we try to make that an even number. And the change, meaning hundreds of dollars, would revert to free cash, so.
One little thing, though, on here, it says 110,000 on here
Oh,
versus
yes,
109.
the 110 was an estimate, the 109 is real, so thank you, I will change. I know these are working documents, but it's still, I will change it anyway so that we're all on the same page. I didn't think you even looked at this, Maureen.
Well, I only noticed because they were different. If it was the same, I wouldn't have noticed. See, you always looking at everything. All right. Any other questions with regard to Article 14? The motion on the floor is to approve. Got all that. Did we motion? We did. All those in favor of recommending approval of Article 14? Okay, good. Okay, we'll recommend it. Okay. Approval of that. Okay, so, which puts us through the whole special town meeting warrant of only 14 articles, but it's taken us a long time, which is fine. That's what we're here for, right? Real quick, I'm just checking the agenda to see if there's anything else going on that we need you here for, Rick. Okay, there isn't, so we've got the recommendations. What I will do is put them together, won't be tonight, possibly tomorrow. My goal will be to get them to you or the assistant town manager, hopefully by Friday. I know Friday's a half day here, so no later than Monday, but it'll get there Friday. The whole idea is to get them, posted online, the recommendations, put into the warrant itself, our recommendations, so that it's all available by the 21st, so that we meet our deadline of the 10 business days prior to the town meeting.
All right, and if, before I go, then if you're letting me go.
I am.
And I will not, run too fast, but I will draft or redraft whatever proposed motions, perhaps, share those with you and town council, and with that, is that?
Yeah,
Because we don't post motions on the,
No, we don't.
on the posted warrant.
We don't post the motions.
Right, but if, I just wanted, if that satisfies you,
Yeah, if you-
I'll do that, and then we'll circulate those. It shouldn't take long, as they're fairly simple motions, most of them, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
In the past, Sean, because you're here, we have had
Should I
a
include-
little sit-down, which, are we gonna plan to do that right before?
What?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
While
I-
you're on TV, could you remind your fans at home the date and time and location of the meeting?
I would love to do that. The special town meeting is scheduled to take place on Monday, November 4th at 7 o'clock in the evening at Abington High School Gymnasium. We need 150 people for a quorum so that we can move forward and take care of all these articles. So I encourage everyone to come and bring a friend.
Or two.
Or two. Bring a friend. Anything else that we need to talk to the town manager about? Anything else? Anyone? Thank you very much for
Well,
attending.
thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much, and
Thank
I will send you that information. Have a good night, be careful. Sort of the last couple things on the agenda here. There is a Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, the 21st. At that Board of Selectmen meeting, they will be taking up the issue of special municipal employee status. The Finance Committee is currently granted special municipal employee status. The Board of Selectmen has decided that they are going to revisit that every year. So in the past, we have that. Does anyone want to discuss that issue and/or representation of the Finance Committee at that Board of Selectmen meeting on the 21st. They have asked for representation from everyone or anyone who wants to offer why they want to keep that status or not. Throw it out to you guys. There's been some emails going on. I am in favor of, and I have sent in my own information saying that I am in favor of keeping special municipal employee status for the members of the Finance Committee. Do you agree?
I sent mine in.
Sent mine in, sent mine in, sent mine. Okay, even though we have sent them in, they still are planning to take that up and would like some sort of representation. Is anyone planning to attend? I
can
was
attend, but I don't want to speak.
Okay. I intend to go. Of course, life changes sometimes, but I do intend to go. I'll speak willingly.
I have to work.
Pardon?
Rick mentioned to me that it might not be on the agenda for October
21st? That's when it was supposed to be. So it may or may not, okay, so more to come on that?
Yeah, it will be held, but apparently it might not be the 21st now.
It might not be on the agenda for the 21st?
Right, I think they have something else going on that they,
Oh, okay, they're
so I don't know.
paring down their agenda, and we'll take that up another time, maybe. Okay, so we'll know more then. All right, so when any of us here, I'll let you guys know, so do you think we'll know ahead of time whether it's gonna be, yeah, they have to put it on their agenda or
They
not?
have to notify everyone who
Yeah.
wants to come speak, so.
Got it.
I don't know how they're gonna, when they're gonna do it, but.
Okay.
Rick just told me.
All right, well, thank you. Well, some more to come on that. All right, then I don't think we have to talk anymore about that for the moment. But anyway, if it does happen, I will go, and anyone else who wants to go is welcome to go. We don't have to speak as a group, but the group itself has to be represented, and the group, each committee, the committee is the one that gets granted special municipal status, not the individual person, so. Anything else? Any liaison updates, any of that? Oh, meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd,
Second.
2013.
And someone seconding that? Matt is? Okay, everyone who's here except Sean, you weren't here, so you can't. So the motion on the floor is to accept the minutes of October 2nd. All those in favor? Okay, we're good to go there. All right, our next meeting, our next official meeting would be scheduled for October 30th. Is everybody good with that? Want to keep that on the books? Yes, no, maybe? I don't know whether we're gonna have to meet or not. I will post a meeting for that, but if we don't have to meet, I will undo that. Otherwise, our next one would be probably at 6 o'clock on November 4th at the town hall, right before the special town meeting. So I'll post it in case we have to meet, just in case, but if we don't have anything to discuss further, because we will have recommendations all taken care of, then we can pull it at that time. Up, and one more thing, one public service announcement. Thank you, Barbara. Save the date, free collection. The SAGE committee, Saving Abington with Green Energy, is sponsoring a collection, free collection, anything with a plug. When November 2nd, which is what day?
It's a Saturday, I believe.
It's a Saturday? Yeah, I think you're right. Hold on, it's right. Yes, it is. Oh,
2 days before the town meeting.
Right.
that's right, 2 days before the town meeting, 2 days after Halloween, for those of you who find that to be a high holiday.
Still wear a costume.
Yes.
Also happens to be SAT day at the high, just in case you're wondering. But anyway, so what we're talking about is, so SAGE is, once again, in cooperation with the CRTR of Brockton and the Abington Board of Health, SAGE is pleased to offer this free event. You can get information on it if you go to www.abingtonsage.com. It is, basically, they're collecting anything with a plug, so it's like your electronics, if you want to recycle those. Also, please bring a non-perishable item for the Abington Food Pantry. Also, personal hygiene items, diapers, laundry detergent, toilet paper, etc. Thank you in advance. Again, it's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on November 2nd, and it is at the Abington Highway Department at 225 Central Street here in Abington. There you go. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn. Anyone want to second that? Second by Sean. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. Hold on, I will shut this down. Just a moment, just a moment. Thank you
vote on
guys
that?
very much.
Do we vote on that?
Yeah.
He hasn't